Ladies and gentlemen, we are live from the Isle of Man in the UK. This is John and Mike's MMA Corner.
Welcome one and all to John and Mike's MMA Corner.
MMA from a different angle.
And before we kick off with obviously our usual saga of laughter and seriousness, professionalism, we're going to start by asking you all to jump onto Facebook, Twitter, the lot really, the social networking sites, and give some of our esteemed colleagues a follow, because their hard work really helps not only us and yourselves, but just MMA grow. So first up we have
MMA Scotland.
We'd like you to also jump onto UFC Wreckage on Facebook. Their Twitter handle and their website is MMA Wreckage.
We also have MMA UK, and their Twitter handle is We Are MMA UK.
Jump on to Facebook to Fighting and MMA.
We also have on Facebook and Twitter The Real MMA Talk.
And last but not least, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on Twitter. Can't miss them. If you like a giggle, you like a laugh, jump onto Funny MMA, kind of putting a light-hearted view on the aspects of MMA and the goings-ons.
I thought it was serious.
Exactly. So that's what you want to jump onto. Now what we're going to do is jump straight in to this week's edition. Right, we're back again. Now there wasn't a lot happening recently, so I suppose we can
Not much to report.
Not much to report.
We'll just make up some crap that it was just a mega weekend in
we'll just make
Vegas or something stupid.
We'll make up a fake weekend that happened in Vegas. No, like everyone knows, there's no point in trying to hide it. The UFC had their mega weekend. Their accumulation of free cards in 3 days. It was, in all honesty, I think it was a bit much, I think.
But you know what? It went well.
It went well.
There were surprises. I think every card had I say a surprise. I mean, if you think back.
Well, I think every card almost has a surprise. You can't. What I meant was, I think though, because I was a guest on the Phantom Knee podcast, and we were speaking about it on there, and he said, it's quite a bit, and it is a bit of an ask, because if you don't live in Canada, America, or Brazil, that kind of alignment. If you live everywhere else,
your time zone. Well,
that's not fair to everyone else around the world.
I'll tell you something, right? I was live at every fight, yeah.
Yeah.
And even I was knackered at the end of it.
Yeah.
Just going to weigh-ins and then going to fights, weigh-ins, and then fights, weigh-ins.
But then
you've
got to think. Imagine you were press reporting each fight.
And then you've got
to write up the fights.
Then I was press. Just there as a fanboy.
Then you've got to imagine doing the interviews before each guys. Then you've got to do the write-ups of the interviews. Then you've got to do the fights. Then you've got to do the post-fights. 30 plus fights.
No, you can do that copy and paste.
That's
and
a lot.
Just look at somebody else's notes.
No, I think that's a.
No,
I think it was a bit much.
It is.
I think it was a bit much.
You know
it's
what?
nice. It was nice. Don't get me wrong.
Do you know what? It was awesome.
No. Don't get me wrong. It was because
it was tough.
Yeah,
it was tough.
But
you know what?
You think it was tough. Try being in the UK. It was tough.
But do you know what I say? I've been knackered for loads of reasons in the past. It's a good reason to be knackered.
No, it was. I feel that me and James spoke about it on the podcast. We said, well, he spoke about it, saying about Cage Warriors did the Super Saturday.
Yeah.
And I said that structure would be a lot better if the UFC did that.
Oh, if they did an all day thing,
like an all day, I said because
two UFCs in one day.
Yeah.
And have a break in the middle.
If the cards were a little bit smaller.
Well, they kind of have in the past where they've done like Australia or something, and then they've gone to the US.
Yeah, but I mean, if you could you could stick it all in one venue.
Yeah.
And have that hour break so everyone can go off, sit down.
Tell the magicians they got to go elsewhere for a day or whatever.
Well, yeah, even like an hour and a half break, everyone go off, get some food, come back, etc. But I think that would probably even work better. Because the reason why I state that would work better, Mike, before you even try, in America they have the NFL, is what I said on there, and the NFL is an all-day event. It's literally from pretty much an all-day event.
I'm not saying don't do it all day.
Listen, it's huge, right? It's huge, bigger than UFC by a mile. In fact, not even close. The numbers they get in the NFL, the UFC dreams of getting. Now, I think if they did like a similar Super Saturday thing, where they said we're gonna have the all-dayer, I think they would get probably more views because you'd get a slow accumulation of people building up to watch the fights, and I think it would work.
Yeah, and then finish obviously on your ultimate.
So you could have
I do think that it was the way. I mean, they've done back-to-back events before, but But normally what they've done is that they've had like the bigger card on the Saturday night, and then they followed it on Sunday nights. Like they have, I know they before everyone screams at the speakers saying no, they've done Fridays followed by Saturdays. I know they have, but they've also done Saturdays followed by Sundays, and I don't think that works as well because you've had your, you know. It's like having your orgasm and then having to do the foreplay. You know,
that's why I think if they did,
not interested. You're looking for your pillow.
If they did an all day Saturday, I think it would work.
Oh yeah, it would work. Yeah. But to be honest with you, they'll do something like that again.
Oh, they will, because
they'll leave it well. They'll let it die down, and then they'll do it again. And do you know what? People will do all three again.
So we're just going to give you a quick heads up then about what we're going to obviously discuss. Obviously, we're going to discuss
a few highlights.
We're going to discuss obviously the Rose, the Rose Page Van Zandt card. Then we'll have a little gander over that one. A quick gander over the Edgar Mendes card. We'll have a quick gander over the Aldo McGregor card. Now, in between, and then obviously at the end, we've got UFC Orlando coming up, which is the last UFC card of the year. It's the last, big promotion kicking off. We've got Risen, which is starting in New Year, but that's a bit. The fights have been announced for that. But then you've got the roundup at the end. We're going to talk a couple of little discussions, but we've also got before you start. Wait. We've got a couple of guests, Mike, as well. Let me get this out there for everyone before you start yapping. We've got a couple of guests coming on as well. We have Louis Giordano. Now we've had him on before. He's part of Nutrition. It's his company. He manages weight. It's not about weight cutting. He comes on to discuss because he's taking on Johnny Hendricks, and we talk a little bit more about it again, the science of it, and what is the IV ban kind of implications and how he feels about stuff. We also have Jeff Wagenheim, who came on to talk to us now. As everyone will know, he's the man with the shirt on the MMA Beat. He is one of the quartet, you like to say, on the MMA Beat with the boys. He came on to discuss the implications of the results from the weekend, from that mega weekend, and some other little ditties in the MMA realm. So he's on. No, what were you going to say, Mike?
No, I was literally saying for anyone that sort of.
Okay, stop.
If we don't. Yeah. No, if anyone's not happy that we miss out a fight, remember, guys, there was 34 fights. If you want us to sit here and go through every single fight, good luck. We'll be on for like 3 nights, like blimmin' UFC was.
I'll tell you what, they can kiss my sweet little backside if they expect that.
And do you know what? Also, I can't remember them all.
No. Do you know why? Because the Gonzaga fight, I'll tell you now, we ain't talking about that.
Do you know what? If you missed that one, guys, go back on YouTube, find it, and watch it, and you'll hate me forever.
Yeah, I told people. I've told people to avoid it.
You won't hate me because you'll commit suicide before the end of it.
I've told everyone to avoid it. It's just shocking.
Well, do you know it was sad. How the mighty have fallen. Like you think to yourself, like
No,
Gonzaga's been in some good
he won.
fights.
He won.
I know, but
it was awful.
No, what I mean is I don't think anyone won that fight.
No.
I'm amazed they survived the fight.
I know. Do you know what I said? I said on the night. I tweeted.
That has got to be the stink of the
whole weekend.
Triple,
yeah. I said Brian Stan and John Amick deserve the performance of the night bonus for talking.
They never tapped out
for talking all the way through that fight. But yeah, we're gonna touch on the first card, which was the Rose and Page Van Zandt card. Let's give some props to a couple of performances. Danny Roberts. Nathan Coy.
Yep.
Danny Roberts. We had him on last week to talk to him about his fight before he competed. Made his UFC debut. Long awaited because he had been out for a while because last time we fought was against Jimmy Wallhead.
If he did have any octagon jitters, he didn't show.
No, he did not. He went.
Stepped up.
He messed up. Nathan Coy got the win. Super happy with form. Now he is probably going to be on the UFC London card as well. So that's good because I spoke to him off air and he's also verbally put it out there as well, so it's all good now. I can say it.
Be nice to see him.
So he said he'll be on the UFC London card. Also, I've got to say that Santiago Ponzinibbio performance against Andreas Stahl was that was just a mess. That was a murder. Beautiful fight, an absolute murder. Stahl just got he'll just wish that weekend never happened. Silence from Mike. Awesome.
Yeah,
I love it.
I was pretty much stoned for that fight.
So
I was stoned for that whole night. I think.
So we got
not in the party.
Too late, ladies and gentlemen. He said it now. There's no turning back. Now we've got Aljamain Sterling against Johnny Eduardo. Again, we spoke to Johnny. We spoke to Aljamain.
I was going to say who's standing now.
Yeah, we spoke to Aljamain Sterling. He finished off Johnny Eduardo. I tell you what a performance from Almeida, because that was a good performance in the fact that he was fighting a guy who had a hell of a lot of experience, and it was actually a tough fight. It was on paper, but Sterling just made it look a breeze.
Yeah, he looked very comfortable.
And he goes into his free agency with all the power.
Loads of whack.
All the power he has got now. He's got all the power. Beautiful stuff. The best fight on the whole weekend was probably Kevin Casey against Antonio Carlos Jr.
Well, I like a fight that's yet to come up because I love dominance.
Well, I loved the Kevin Casey Antonio Carlos Jr. fight. Did you?
I'm trying to wrap my brain.
Eye poke after 11 seconds.
Oh no! It didn't really sink in me. Right? Yeah, I do remember that one now.
That was a shame. I tell you what, I don't know. You probably didn't see ladies and gentlemen. It was an eye poke. There was the one fight in the whole card of the whole weekend. Sorry, that stopped because of let's say an injury. They got eye poked, and I tell you what, it was a legit eye poke. He literally had blood pouring, and he showed an image of it.
I tell you what, right from Kay's side. We literally thought. Does anyone remember back to I forget which fight it was, but there was a fight where the referee asked the fighters, "Can you see?"
And he said, "No, I can't see."
"I can't see."
Yeah.
Instead of giving him a few seconds just to clear his vision,
stopped the fight straight away.
He went, boom, waved it off.
Yeah.
I thought we'd had another moment like that again.
Yeah.
Because obviously from Kay's side you can't hear what's being said.
You know what's annoying? I watched that fight recently. I just can't remember which fight it was. I actually watched that fight recently. Well, the card recently. Sorry.
But I literally thought, because obviously from Kay's side you can't hear what's being said, and I thought to myself, no, please don't say we've had another moment like that. But obviously, you know, here and now, like
we're gonna go to Tim Means John Howard fight. Hell of a fight, that one.
It's frightening. That was one of those fights where you think to yourself, I don't like that. I don't like seeing fighters stretched out. You know they've lost hours off their life.
Like, Tim Means is a nasty man.
I was going to say, fantastic result.
And Tim Means is awesome. But at 170, he's just killing it at the moment. Obviously, lost to Matt Brown, but other than that, he's just been awesome.
It's not often you see people knocked out like that.
No, it's not. And I tell you what,
you know what I mean?
I said that Tim Means is a nasty guy, and that's a fight to look out for last week, and it was. We're going to go next up to, I tell you what, a man who tried to impersonate having a people's eyebrow over his eyebrow with a scar. Elias Theodore against Thiago Santos.
Yeah, that was a bit of a channel.
That was, I tell you what,
we got that one pretty wrong.
Elias in the first round, it was a 50-50 first round. It was 50-50. There wasn't much to it on either party, but I think it was more of a gauge finder. They find each other's range, timings. And Elias looked like he just gassed out second round. It looked like
again from KSI, it looked like he gassed him. And everyone...
He just survived.
I was in very good company at the time, and everyone was pretty much saying that he looks like he just lost his lungs, and
he just was clinging on for dear life. And you know what? He was doing some really basic, silly manoeuvres that landed him in those bad positions, and you could see that his muscle memory isn't of a high enough level to get him out of danger. You'll naturally
do the right thing.
He was putting himself in that kind of, I'd say, I don't want to say newbie positions, but he was putting himself in terror. And the thing is, he did it more than once, and he kept doing it, and he didn't obviously...
You can say, I mean, obviously, a fatigued mind of a certain level will make mistakes. And it's only when you're a higher level where no matter how tired you are, you'll still go to the right thing. When you are of a lower level, you will make mistakes, and
he just needs to drill
fatigue.
He just needs to drill that muscle memory,
which comes with time. You know, it's.
We're going to go next to Sage Northcutt, Cody Pfister.
Yep.
Go ahead, Mike. What do you think?
Youngest muscles in the world. Okay, this was one of the biggest mistakes of the weekend. Not by the fighters, by the referee.
Yeah.
Okay, now Pfister I thought was fighting the perfect fight that he needed to do. He needed to be a blanket, and we spoke about it beforehand. We said what he needed to do, the only tactics that would work against Sage, and they were working. And then the referee must have got a text in through Dana saying, "I need you to bail me out in this one," and he stood them up for no reason. He actually had to stop Pfister from punching
to get him to stand up. It was
strange. To stand them up, and it was disgusting. Dana's agreed with it, and pretty much everyone.
And then in the second round, Sage ended up just finishing Cody with a guillotine, where Cody was going in for a takedown, and it was a sloppy takedown, which ended up getting guillotined. And again, but Sage Northcutt didn't use great technique for the guillotine. He was using a lot of just
power and
just trying
strength.
to squeeze it, rather than technical, just trying to gut it out. It was an easy enough win for Sage. He gets 40,000 for that win as well, and a 40,000 bonus.
But there's your blueprint. There's your blueprint on how to fight Sage at this moment.
Oh well, I think everyone knew that.
With the youngest big muscles in the world.
Everyone knew that. The question was, if you can close him down, it's similar to like a Pettis.
Yeah, but
if you close him down, it will affect his style. His style is flash, and he needs room to do that. He can't do it if he doesn't have room. So he closes down.
I must admit, by the way, from K's side, that cage looked tiny.
It's a smaller cage, yeah.
Tiny. Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, it was a small cage, but it looked tiny, absolutely tiny.
Co-main event was Jim Miller, Michael Chiesa. It was a literal changing of the guard, that fight.
Yeah.
You had Jim Miller, who was proven to be an absolute warrior over time.
He had his
the first round was an beautiful exhibition of jiu-jitsu on the ground, of escaping from submissions and going for them. It was beautiful to watch. Michael Chiesa got it out to second round and was able to just. I doubt Jim Miller was tired. No, I think it was Jim Miller went for a leg lock off the top of his head, and that was when Chiesa rocked him with a couple of hammer fists, and that was what rocked Jim Miller, and that led to his demise. So. He literally put himself in a bad position for the leg lock that basically Chiesa ended up taking advantage of.
Yeah,
but you know what? For Chiesa, it's a good name to have on his because like you said, it puts him in the top 15. Now he is, like I said, he's ranked 15. The rankings are a bit swift, but you just say he's on the 15. He wants now only top 15 ranked guys.
Yeah, he wants to get some momentum behind
It'll give him a bit of confidence as well, beating a guy like Jim Miller.
Oh yeah, because only.
I'm not even saying he's a
good level.
I don't want to say he's a game. What's it called? Not a game.
Gatekeeper.
Gatekeeper. Like Gleason Tebow, you would class as a gatekeeper, but Jim Miller's a guy.
Well, not from where he's from.
No, not where he's from now. But
he's a gamekeeper now.
Yeah. So, do you know what? Chiesa, interested to see who they match him up with next. See what he does with his 2016.
To be honest, Jim Miller, you would actually say he's a gatekeeper now.
You would now. After that fight, I would. But if he had won, I would have went. Might see Jim Miller bringing him back self in now, because Chiesa, like I said, he's a young breed coming through.
Yeah, never really in boring fights or anything. He goes out there, tries to finish.
I don't know what Jim Miller does from here, but we'll see what happens with him.
I think it gets tough, and with the UFC still looking to cut a few names, I wouldn't be surprised.
I reckon he'll be around.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it'd be sad, and anyone that knows me knows that I love Jim Miller. So.
I reckon Jim he'll still be around. You've got main event, Rose, Page. I think we fell into the hype of the Page.
Excuse me.
What?
When you say we, do you mean you? Because I picked Rose to win that.
Oh yeah, okay then. I don't know if he did.
Yeah.
I picked Paige. I say hype. Yeah, I think I did because I said scrappiness, wasn't it? I said her scrappiness is what gets her the win. I never said she was a polished finished product. But I think it was scrappiness that gets her the win. Do you want to know something though?
Right, so in this fight, you literally had Rose win every second of every minute of every round.
It wasn't. She even won the 1 minute between each round breaks.
Yeah. Yeah. It was total dominance. Fantastic. No rule breaking. It was, very clean fight. Well I say clean minus the blood that was being thrown around.
I was about to say, but,
and a couple of times I thought from Kay's side that Paige was going to get finished earlier.
I thought she was.
She got out, and she did. And to be honest with you, I'm really pleased that it went as long as it did, because you know what? That girl has shown the sort of toughness that you normally get from an older fighter. I think that will do her good, because although she's lost, that loss won't do her loads of harm. She's so young that she can definitely come again. And I think she's proved to herself, you can't prove how tough you are until you've lost in a fight like that.
But you don't want to have a lot of them fights.
Oh no! You don't want any more of them. You don't want any more of them.
That's the problem. I didn't like it. I didn't like it.
You can have one like that.
I didn't like because she went 5.
She can have one like that because she knows then when she's in a fight that's really tough, she knows that she can gut it out.
I think Rose should have finished her earlier with the rear naked choke that she had on earlier on, and the reason why I think in fact I don't think she should have. She had that on. Her positioning and her finishing on that was not right. She should have hyperextended her back to elongate Paige Van Zandt, and she would have got the finish there. But instead, she went for that closed, tight grip and tried to use more strength than anything else. It wasn't the right way to finish that fight. She could have had it earlier and got out there earlier. But fair enough, it was a demolition.
I was going to say, but praise where praise is due.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't know if I praise a fighter for being... Yeah, I suppose you could praise Paige. I would...
Good win.
No. I'm talking about Paige. I'm talking about Paige, Mike.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
right.
you're not listening. I'm not going to praise Paige. I'm more going to critique Rose, and I think Rose should have had that bit earlier. I don't know if it was Paige's toughness or it was Rose's not quite getting that finish in.
She did derail one of the wheels off the hype train though, with Paige.
She did make.
She made
Dana lose a bit of hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he lost a little bit in the first round with Sage. He lost a whole bunch with Paige.
Yeah.
It's pretty much only Conor left, but we'll get to that.
Now we've got tough finale. We're going to go into that card. Let's, like I say, skip Gonzaga. We're going to go to.
Well,
I didn't think the Mike Pierce Ryan LaFleur fight was that great. I thought. Do you know what?
It finished fantastic. The last
20 seconds. Like, how can people think 20 seconds makes a fight? It gripes me.
No. Can I just say something though?
Go on.
This is right. This is what annoys me. You've got the last 20 seconds of the fight, and the losing fighter, who's been losing all the way through, suddenly starts throwing down like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. And you think to yourself, now if you've got that in the last moments of the fight, why didn't you do that 3 minutes out? Do you know what I mean? I know there's other aspects to it, like you know, was Ryan LaFleur gassing, etc., you know. But if you're going to lose a fight, I mean, it's easy sitting from the sofa. I know, talking. You know, you're not in there, but if you're going to lose, give everything.
Ryan LaFleur, though,
give everything.
And Mike Pierce, like I said it was an interesting fight. I said because Ryan LaFleur was coming off his first loss. Mike Pierce been out for a while, so it was a cagey fight in the sense of they were both playing it safe. They just wanted to both get the win. They were both they wanted to get the win, and they were probably happy to get a decision win just to get it out the way and get on to the next one, so they can loosen off a bit more the next fight, so to speak. They can take a bit more risk. I think because maybe the fear of being with 2 losses might get you. The fear it might be worth them being cut. Mike Pierce, though, I think LaFleur just kept having him on that striking game. Like, he caught a couple of shots, but I think LaFleur always just had a bit more.
But it just the way that
the 20
Mike
seconds
Pierce went into that last moment. I think to myself,
great me.
You want to be spent going into sort of like the klaxon.
One fight that went. One fight that deserves a lot of praise more than he got over the weekend. Evan Dunham against Joe Lozon. Evan Dunham looked absolutely spot on in that fight.
Yeah, it might not be the most pleasing to most people's eyes.
No.
But for a guy to come in with the right game plan and see it through to the end, when you've got everyone else sort of asking you to give more, don't give more, get the win. Because that guy is getting himself into a position of a...
Evan Dunham was... Do you know what was beautiful about it was? He was just happy to throw lovely combinations, throwing all sorts of combinations. He wasn't throwing just a jab, and he was mixing it up. And Joe Lozon, to be fair, looked really flat. Joe Lozon looked like
it didn't look like the Joe Lozon
it was strange.
We've seen before, but that might be down to Evan Dunham.
It might have been down to Evan Dunham. But I don't know what's... Like, Joe Lozon's... He's not the kind of guy who'll come out with excuses. He'll never say anything, but... I just feel like we didn't actually see the normal Joe Lozon. Yeah,
you know, has he had an injury in training?
We don't know. We could have
has he had an illness the week before, fight week or something?
We don't know. He could have had vomit and diarrhea.
And you know what? You probably aren't going to hear.
No,
he isn't the sort.
I think a contender for fight of the year was Edson Barboza and Tony Ferguson.
Oh yeah, talk about excitement. I mean, it came as no shock. I think this was everyone's sort of expected fight of
the weekend. It was one of the top 3 fights that people should have logically been known it was going to be a bomb, but there was no way it was going to be a stinker.
Normally, when a fighter gets injured or has to pull out of a fight, you're normally like, gutted. But then when this fight got announced, I was like, there's nothing to be gutted about in this fight.
Yeah, it actually might have turned out better.
I think so.
Because you get a different type of fight.
Yeah.
It's a whole different fight.
With this one, it was almost like, why wasn't this fight made anyway?
Yeah. Well, now that you look at it,
it was like,
you had Tony Ferguson, who put on an array of grappling, striking.
He was the hunter, wasn't he, in this fight?
Of momentous kind of quantity. It was just unreal what he was throwing.
Yeah.
He had the audacity to do things that against a striker like Barboza, you wouldn't think.
But put it this way, you wouldn't do it in training against a better, a better training.
But Barboza was going to hurt you if you messed up, and he cracked Ferguson. But Ferguson was throwing such a different array of strikes, but Barboza couldn't get his timing. Barboza couldn't get the distance right. He couldn't get anything that he ideally wouldn't.
Really or anything.
Not really. And even though we had Mark Henry in his corner for Barboza, who is a beautiful tactician with combination, I think Tony Ferguson's the kind of guy.
He throws everything out the window, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's the kind of guy who will mess up everything because he won't do what you want him to.
You can't predict.
Yeah, you won't be there going, he's going to throw a jab, then he's going to throw a right, he's going to do this. He doesn't do what you want him to. And I think Barboza probably just couldn't get everything going. He couldn't get that timing going. And do you know what? But Ferguson on the ground, I've always said that door stroke. And what happened? Got that door stroke in. I tell you what, I was buzzing about that. Absolutely buzzing. And Ferguson now, 7-fight win streak. He's won.
Do you know what? He has got one eye on the prize.
He's one win away.
He'll be watching this weekend.
He's one win away. He won't fight the winner of this fight. He's one win away. He'll fight one of the guys in the top 5, and he gets the title shot.
Yeah, because he is super exciting. And do you know what? I think give him the chance of that. Give him a sniff of that title.
Yeah,
he could just win it. And I'm a big Cerrone fan. You know what I mean? I'm a massive Cerrone fan. But do you know what? I think I'd worry for Cerrone.
Tony's the new breed in a way. He's just an exciting dude to watch. I just love watching him fight.
I was going to say I think he's your MMA fighter of the future. This is what you're going to see.
2016.
Somebody that comes in with stuff that you don't often see in training. And he's all arms and legs.
Okay, main event: Frankie Edgar, Chad Mendes. I tell you what. Frankie Edgar, we love him. We always said we loved him.
Yeah. And
he showed why, because he did something that we don't often see. Now, I said it could be part... Now, he knocked out Chad Mendes in the first round. We didn't see that happen.
No, I don't think Frankie Edgar saw that happening.
But, I tell you what, I'm not discrediting what Frankie did, but I don't know maybe if Chad... fully got back.
Yeah, did he come back too soon?
Did he come back a bit too soon from already getting finished previously with another TKO?
Yeah, there's basically a mention about scientists looking into it, and they're saying that basically if you get knocked out or take a succession of punches or whatever to the head, you need time, for your head, your brain,
the trauma.
whatever it is, to heal. Yeah. And
you're more susceptible to another knockout if you come back sooner, and it's very common.
I mean, I know you get these 6-month suspensions, but is 6 months really enough?
No.
It's
no. I think that for Chad, I think now again, it's not one question. There's a lot of questions now to answer for Chad. And for Chad, if I was him, I'd get off the radar. I'd go away and just take a nice long break.
Take a year out. Go hunting. Go and hunt everything.
If I was Chad Mendes, I would go and take a few months away from training completely.
Yeah.
But exactly. What I would do is...
Don't even take shots in the gym.
I'd do obviously general fitness, but I wouldn't do...
Put it this way, you could go and do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, but what I mean is, I would just go and do some just general fitness to keep myself topped up.
Yeah, go and hit some weights.
But then, I would take a long time to get back in before I did any striking to the heads. I would definitely probably come back at the end of the year.
Because let's be honest, Frankie... never been known as a one-shot, one-kill merchant.
No.
You know.
Now, he did say he's been trying to plant his feet down a bit more when he throws his strikes, so he throws more power. And you know what? I can't say he didn't. Obviously, because it did work. I think
he was moving when he threw that shot.
But yeah, exactly. So it's one of them ones you think. Ugh.
Now, okay, yeah, anyone can knock someone out. Okay, it can happen.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It's two forces hitting each other, but yeah, I do think that these scientists might have hit on something with this.
Yeah.
Needing time to heal. So anyone that takes it, even in a winning fight, if you've been in a hard fight, maybe you still need to take some time out. You haven't got to be knocked out.
No.
Because sometimes you get like these flash knockouts in fights, and you still go on and win the fight. Like Anderson Silva in the second fight with Chris Weidman.
Yeah, I was going to say Frank Mir and Josh Barnett. That was a good one way, because you watch them just drop like a...
bounce, and literally like on the bounce, wakes up on the bounce,
That's a long time out, because that's still a knockout. The chemical's still getting released in the brain, and that's still not right, so...
TJ Grant will tell you all about this. Who's still out with a concussion. Yeah. Maybe never going to come back.
Well, he's not. He's working in a coal mine or whatever it is.
That's right.
I don't know what he's working in, some kind of mine.
Hopefully he finds gold and diamonds down there.
Yeah.
That man was...
he was going to get a title shot.
He went against
he had a title shot booked, and then he stepped out. We're going to go now to our next guest. How about our first guest?
Oh, by the way, before we leave Frankie Edgar,
you better be quick.
He deserves the next title shot
By a country mile. We'll talk about that next.
Yeah.
We've got our guest is Louis Giordano. We've had him on before, and again, he is the man looking after. You're going to see more fighters. Probably they're not even publicised yet, but he's started looking after a lot of professional fighters in the weight management side of things, not weight cutting, weight management, helping guys get their weight down. It's important to get him back on again, because he talks about what he's doing with Johnny Hendricks. We know Johnny Hendricks likes to eat his food, and also the IV ban. It's important someone like him coming in to look after guys, because people aren't maybe taking the IV ban seriously. They're not maybe doing it the right way. Especially with the recent passing at ONE FC with the young 21-year-old fighter, and his name is Ying. I'm going to get the name here because I don't want to disrespect the man with the wrong pronunciation. It's Yang Jian Bing. There you go. That's probably wrong still, but it was terrible, the weight cut, and there's little things like that, incidences that happen, and it does raise a lot of questions. And I think people need to take Lewis a bit more serious in what he says, and any guy really.
Yeah, bit of sadness on the weekend really,
which went very much under the radar because of the UFC. It was on the wrong promotion. I know it sounds daft, but it was on the wrong promotion. So we're going to go on to Lewis now. Hello again. Thank you for coming back, Lewis. So since we talked last time, Mr. Johnny Hendricks has got his bout side with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Now, my question firstly is, do you know what weight Hendricks is at the moment, and are you happy with the weight he is at the moment before he starts getting ready to throw down?
First, I just want to say thank you guys for having me on. It was a pleasure last time, and I love speaking to you guys. So thank you for that. And right now, actually, Johnny's weight is about maybe 1.5 to 2 pounds over where he normally is for fight week, and we're still about 7 weeks away from the fight. So we're very excited as to where he is. We're very excited as to his opponent, and things couldn't be going better right now.
So what's Johnny done then with yourself in this, obviously before the fight got announced, then obviously, because to get his weight around there, the weight he has now, he must have been looking after himself a lot better than he has done in the past. So what kind of stuff have you done with him?
Absolutely. So the first thing we needed to do, and as I said, my program has 5 phases, and the first phase is kind of just trying to clean up his eating habits now, and that could be, he's a busy man. He's a husband. He's a father. So he's running around with his kids, and sometimes getting the cleanest food or having a pre-made meal isn't feasible, especially in the beginning. So it was really just cleaning up if he had to take his kids somewhere, or that was the only place he had to eat was, let's say, even a fast food restaurant. I was able to tell him what to get there to stay on track as far as what I wanted him to consume for the day. And once you do that, once you stabilize and get somebody comfortable with eating a certain amount of protein, carbohydrates, and fats, then to go from phase 1 to 2, which is then cleaning everything up, it makes the transition that much easier. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Right. So the other thing was, obviously, he needs to train hard. He's going to put himself through a lot. With his weight being the way it is at the moment, like you say, not that far off fight week weight, because obviously he's going to lose a bit of weight with hard training. Will you be looking to kind of keep him where he is then? Will you not obviously want him to lose any more?
Well, great question, because I was just actually on the phone with Johnny for about an hour prior to this phone call, because, we text every day, all day, and then every once in a while we'll get on the phone, and when we're getting ready to shift gears, and that's where we're at now, because, where his training is actually getting a little bit more intense. So I have to change up, again, his meal plans and stuff. And actually, we're gonna work to get him a little bit lower and have him kind of stabilize there. And the point is this, that when you're used to cutting weight, and I say cutting weight because I manage it, so when you're used to cutting weight, you can go into a practice and sweat and lose 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds. But when you're managing your weight, the weight doesn't come off that way. So it's more realistic, whereas the way I have Johnny's body right now, he may not go into a practice and lose 8 pounds, but he's also not going to gain 6 if he drinks a half a cup of water. So it's much safer doing it this way because we're getting his body to adjust in a realistic fashion. So we are going to keep getting him to go a little bit lower, and then probably hold him at about a 180, 185 for a short period of time, and then, fight week, we should be no more than 5 pounds over for that week, which is, 20 pounds lighter than what he's used to.
I was going to say, because he did used to cut a lot on fight week.
Yeah, he used to have monster cuts.
Yeah, he did. It was monstrous. And with the IV ban coming in, I suppose it is a lot of fighters will be looking to, like you say, be maybe 5 pounds off on fight week because they can't get that rehydration that they used to be able to.
Yeah, so, Johnny's used to the last few fights, he would come in to fight week actually weighing close to 91, 92 pounds, I think he was saying, which to me is an extreme weight cut, 5 days out, 4 days out. And I think, like you said earlier, with the IV ban, it's going to force guys to have to come in even lighter because they can't rely on, the IV use to help them hydrate afterwards. So, again, I think it's a good thing that the IV ban has taken place.
Can you see a lot of fighters then? In fact, do you know what? Have you had more guys recently contact you, not just UFC based, but just fighters in general? Maybe coming, obviously since the announcement with maybe Eddie Jordan, Johnny Hendricks, Aljamain Sterling. Have you had other guys come up and speak to you? Maybe direct emails to help with this because they want to get their weight down a little bit lower and just to help themselves without the drastic weight cutting.
Absolutely. After the press release was with Aljamain and then obviously with Johnny, my social media started to blow up, and I'm not being conceited or cocky about it. I can show everybody the emails, and from people who are in the UFC and people who are actually fighting in other organizations, and I had a couple of college wrestlers reach out to me. And, and the first thing they all say, because it always comes down to money and they want to know, finances. And what I try to do is I try to look at everything and everybody and just try to give out some advice. I don't charge people to give out some free advice, but if you want me to work with you exclusively, that's a little bit different. But it just amazes me the amount of miscommunication or the lack of knowledge that's even being put out there. A lot of these high-level guys, they all cut weight very similar, very, very similar. So I've had a lot of people reach out to me. I've had people reach out to me saying they used other methods, without mentioning any names. They've tried other programs, and they just didn't feel that great, and they want to know what my system's all about. So it's definitely kind of taken off.
But do you think a lot of them, like you said, they've got quite a similar theme? Do you think due to maybe that's the American base with the wrestlers, because they're used to quite extreme weight cutting in high school with wrestling weight cut, is that maybe something that you've noticed there?
Two things, actually, and this may get me into a lot of trouble with my fellow Americans, but I think that it's America is a horrible nation when it comes to food. They just overeat to begin with. It's funny, as a kid, I used to hear people talking about traveling overseas, going to Europe, and one thing they would always talk about is, man, the portion sizes there, they're so small. And as I got educated, I would say to myself, No, the portion sizes there are the correct portion sizes. The portion sizes here are for a family, and it's for one person. So I think that, they're used to eating a lot more food than they should. And then, yes, absolutely. Every time I speak to a wrestler, and most of the clients I speak to do come from wrestling, I come from wrestling. I cut weight the same way that they all did. And yeah, it's a tough mentality to break. And I think because I wrestled, that helps me a little bit explain to them that, hey, guys, I used to also do that, and now I also do this. Like with Johnny, I'm eating what he's eating. I'm down, just as much weight as he is because I have to put myself through, as much as I can to kind of understand what they're feeling so I know how to adjust it on the fly.
I must admit, I've just been out in Vegas myself, and I went to one or two buffets when I was there. I'll be honest, but even the plates are bigger. Yep. It
encourages you to fill it.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean?
It's like, you want to fill it.
Obviously, I've got my limit that I'm used to. And I'm a bit of a grazer anyway. But it's like you'd look around and you'd see people hammering the buffet, and you'd think to yourself, like, surely with the education and the amount of different ways that you can get that information out there must be a more educated view on people's own health. Take sport away from it. Like, no one wants to die young, or not many people anyway. You can eat half healthy, you know what I mean, and increase your own daily health. Yeah. You know what I mean. Like, you haven't got to be like full bore all the time, like, and. You've got the internet, you've got the written word, and you've got TV, etc. So there's no excuse for not knowing a half-healthy diet, But
absolutely, and so you could understand and share my frustration. Again, the number one cause of death in America is coronary heart disease, and it's curable and preventable. Yet it's still the number one cause of death. That's like saying, this body of water consists of the most sharks and most shark attacks. Well, I'm going to go swim with chum hanging off my belt. Why would you do something, that you can cure and prevent when it's that dangerous? And, it's even like this. I had a friend of mine years ago, his family owned a McDonald's. And he was telling me, I don't know if you guys are getting some feedback. I'm getting feedback on.
It's okay for us.
Oh, okay. So he would tell me that his employees used to get in trouble if when they took an order from somebody, they didn't get them to supersize their order.
Right.
And again, it's mind-boggling that 60 ounces of soda isn't enough. You got to get them to drink 2 gallons of it with their Big Mac and Happy Meal. It's scary.
You have cup sizes out there that we don't have, and I'm not talking about the ladies.
Yeah, we've never. Yeah.
It literally looked like a popcorn tub.
Mm.
I couldn't get over it. It was.
But they're clever. The companies. This is not just the US base. It's based around the world. Where, for example, with McDonald's, what they would do is their fries. They would have a salt-based oil. So the saltier chips. Then they would give you the drink, which have extra ice in. So it's filled to the top with ice. So it's only a small amount of fluid you get. So then that would basically.
Yeah, you can pour your own though.
The chips would. No, but the thing is, what they're doing is the chips would dehydrate you, so they make you drink more, so you're drinking more soda. And it's a very clever ploy that the companies do, because they put extra salt in their meals, when in reality you only need a pinch of salt a day, and they're putting more in their meals than you could actually handle.
But the drink alone is just
soda. Yeah.
We don't even have a cup size like that.
No, we don't. We won't. No.
It's
it is crazy.
You're better off.
Yeah. We don't go. I don't do fast food anyway.
Encourages them to walk back up to the counter again.
Yeah, extra cardio.
There you go.
No, but so with Johnny, how did he find it? Obviously, getting that habit, eating differently to try and change his ways of eating. Like, how did he find it at first? Obviously, I must have found it a bit difficult.
It wasn't as difficult as a lot of people probably think, hearing Johnny talk that he, loves food and is not shy about it. But once I explain my philosophy, my way, and that he'll be able to eat majority of the food that he does enjoy, it actually has been very easy. I ask him, hey, Johnny, what do you feel like having? What kind of food do you feel like having? And if he's craving something, Like the other day, he was craving something specific. I was able to manipulate it and give it to him, and knowing that it was going to be a healthier version of it, and it satisfied the crave and it satisfied me. So it's actually been very easy. I just need somebody who's going to listen and communicate. Then everything else is very easy at that point.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we've got a holiday season coming up. We've got Christmas just next week. It's next week, isn't it?
Yeah, next week.
Yeah. So I take it as a family man and a man that enjoys his food. Obviously, he'll want to have some kind of Christmas dinner. Is he able to have a full Christmas dinner, and throw that
Christmas pudding
meal away as well? Obviously, there'd be some compromise, I'm guessing, or is he able to go full bore, or what's the plan for that one?
Well, that's the beauty of what we're doing, and I think Johnny enjoys getting back into that cage and proving a lot of people wrong more than overeating. For Thanksgiving, he didn't overeat at all. He sent me photos of everything he ate. I was expecting it to be a lot more, to be honest, and it wasn't. So for me, the most important thing is as long as it's a complete meal, as long as he's eating a protein, a carbohydrate, and some good fats, then he's going to eat what he wants and just be in moderation of it. I'm not worried about him overeating. He's not worried about it. We haven't even talked about it. It's just another day at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I suppose watching Aljamain perform as well, he looked like he had plenty of energy. His weight cut obviously clearly went well. And I'm sure Aljamain is, still talking to you now afterwards to keep his weight satisfied. How did it go with Aljamain? Did you find, obviously making his, with his debut with you, so to speak, is looking after his, managing his weight?
With Aljamain, it was very different than it's been with a lot of other clients. And what that was is instead of me kind of telling him what to do from A to Z, we communicated. He shared his visions. I shared mine. He would ask me what I thought. He would tell me what he wanted to do. And we met in the middle, and it worked very well for him and I. And again, he stepped on scale eating some M&Ms and went in there and looked fantastic. I don't take credit for it. He put in the work, and he was very happy with it. We had a long conversation afterwards, and we're still going to continue, that process as well.
Yeah,
so it went very well.
Yeah, his energy levels, that's the key. It's how he physically looked, how his energy levels were, and a lot of that is down to nutrition. If you can't go into a fight after eating 10 cheeseburgers after you've weighed in, because you won't look well and you won't perform well. So it's a
how long can you stay in that gear for?
And he did, like you say. Obviously, he puts the hard work in and he performed well. So I suppose it's just nice that your work is kind of evidence to people. Before you even get to Johnny performing when he fights Wonderboy. It's quite an interesting battle, and do you know what? I think it's going to be interesting to see Johnny Hendricks when he fights someone like Stephen Thompson, because he will have to have a lot of cardio, because Wonderboy's got that good footwork, so he's going to have to be very. It's not going to be one way he can just use explosive power.
Yeah, he's not always going to be stood in front of him.
Yeah, he isn't. Yeah. So we will need to see probably a lighter, like you say, a lighter Johnny Hendricks.
Well, he'll have to go on a hike a bit every now and again.
So it's going to be interesting to see how he is when it comes fight day, and that's why I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes with yourself and him. Hopefully Johnny's, will be posting pictures so people can see how great condition he is.
And he's gonna, we were talking about that. We kind of have a plan over the next few weeks. We're gonna start showing some things, and you're 100% right. And that's the beauty of knowing your opponent as far out as you possibly can, because then you can prepare for it. And two quick things I wanted to touch on that's relative to this. I was speaking to, again, a lot of other fighters recently who have used other programs, tried doing it on their own. And the one thing that I found to be very shocking was every other program and every other person who tried it on their own stopped after they got on the scale. In other words, they would follow a program to make their weight. As long as they made their weight, it was like a free-for-all. And for me, there's as much work that goes into what you put into your body and how after you weigh in and fight day as the entire camp. So I was very shocked to hear and see that these guys step on the scale and then boom, it's a free-for-all. There's a reason that you want to put certain foods into your body in a certain amount. So again, that's going to be even more exciting for when Johnny does that, because he's also never followed a protocol like that.
I was going to say, do you have a set idea then on how much you would like a guy to go in after he's weighed in? Like how much heavier would you say, like, would you personally be like, I don't want you to be any more than 10 pounds heavier? If you manage to, like, obviously, depending on the weight class, will vary on their weight. But is there like a little kind of a scale that you have that you like people to keep within? Because if you come in too heavy, you've obviously overindulged, and that means your body's going to be working overtime to break down that food.
All your blood's are going to
all your blood's being used the way I don't need it to be.
Right, and here's the beauty of that is, and that's where the fighter comes into play. My bottom line is I don't want my guys walking more than 15 pounds over their weight class. So let's just take Johnny's weight at 170. Let's get him to walk around at 185. And let's say at 185, 182, whatever the number is, whatever weight Johnny felt the best at, whatever weight his coaches say, hey, Johnny's hitting the hardest, looks the best, the fastest at 182 pounds, then we're going to try to put him exactly at 182. In Eddie Gordon's case, he fought at 185. He held 192 the longest. He felt the best at 192. He stepped into the scale at 192. And same thing with Aljamain. He wanted to be as close to 148 as possible. I think he was 148 or 149. So the fighter gets to tell me where they feel the best at, and then it's my job to put them there safely.
Right, yeah, because I was going to say that is quite important, because like you say, because you could either not have enough in you before the fight, or you could have too much, so there is a really fine line.
They'll have their own optimum functioning weight,
so it is a fine balance, because obviously you don't want to drink too much fluids and dilute yourself in the sense of dilute the nutrients in your body and the salts. So it's key, and I think that's kind of interesting what you're doing with them. And it's also giving other people at home listening an idea of what it is exactly it takes to get everything on point. Because like you say, when people weigh in, they think it's a free-for-all. And it's not. Exactly. It's about having that optimal performance by being your optimal weight. And it's all literally got to work, and you've got to be careful, and you've got to just... that's why your advice and what you can do for people is invaluable.
100%, and I appreciate that, because it shows, like, even people probably won't even look at this or didn't pay attention to us, but obviously I'm sure you watched the Weidman and Rockhold fight, correct?
I watched every fight.
Row 13.
Right. And here's what I picked up on. I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but one of the things Rockhold said after the fight was, I was actually shocked at how fast and how tired I got. Do you remember him saying that?
Yep.
Yeah.
So when he said that, boom, a light went off in my head, and I went back, I watched all the embeddeds, and I started to pay attention, and this is what I found. I watched some of his other fights recently. He never looked like he ever got tired in any of other fights. Rockhold's always in great shape, looks great, never had a problem making weight, cutting weight. He brought in a nutritionist for this fight, and I don't know the guy, I'm not ragging on the guy, I'm just trying to state some facts. So he brought in a nutritionist for this fight, he made weight, and then he got tired during the fight. So what that says to me is, tired for me equals fuel, right? So if you're getting tired during the fight, then I'm curious as to what happened with his nutrition leading up to the weigh-in and what he did for nutrition after the weigh-in, because I think something went wrong there for him to feel as tired as he did, and he looked exhausted in the second round.
I believe he had an illness and he was on antibiotics.
Staph infection. He had a staph infection 2 weeks before.
He did have a bit of a health problem.
Yeah, I mean that could have played a role too. I'm looking at it from a food standpoint. Definitely could have played a role as well.
Well, that's the thing. You think to yourself.
I mean, but also he wasn't fighting Chris Weidman in the other fight. That's why I played part of it as well. But
I suppose it is. When you watch it, you do look at little things like that, and you do wonder when you see. Do you look at certain fighters once they've weighed in, and then once they're in the cage? Do you think he looks a bit either maybe bloated or maybe he's not had enough? Can you yourself tell or notice little things like that?
Immediately, and again, that's not me being conceited, but immediately when I saw Conor step on the scale, and when I saw him step into the cage. Not that there was any doubt that he wasn't going to win the fight. I would have been curious to see if it would have went 4 or 5 rounds, how he would have performed. Because I felt like he did look a little too drawn out. And I think that he would have gotten tired, possibly. So when I watch the weigh-ins, I'm not, your typical fan that's looking for the shoving and the pushing. I'm looking to see, how they look on the scale. And more importantly, people overlook this, but food plays a huge role on our hormone levels. So depending on how they act during the weigh-in, will also let me know how depleted they are, how malnourished they are.
I quite like this, you see, because obviously people watch it for all different reasons, and it's quite nice to get a different perspective, especially, you know, your knowledge and your kind of insight into this really does help, because now I can look at maybe fights. I won't have a clue what I'm thinking like you will, but it does give you a different angle, you see. So you've got all sorts of people, because when you're on Twitter, everyone talks about guys getting on the scales all the time. You know, you just can't avoid it. So it's nice hearing what you're doing. So, like you said, you've got a lot of other guys talking. Are you looking then? Will we be seeing your name pop up more with more guys, or are they just wanting? Is this like are they wanting to do it? Are they doing it privately with you? What's going to happen with you?
You know, it's tough for me to answer because again, I don't do things to really. Throw my name out there. I only want to work with people who want to work together. You know, I helped George Masvidal for his fight against Benson Henderson. I helped him throughout the entire camp. We didn't do one media release, not one interview, never spoke about it. Him and I just did our thing, and we helped each other. And then about a month later, you know, he put out a tweet thanking me and saying that I really know my stuff, which was very nice of him. And I just do it because I genuinely like helping people. So I do have a number of guys that I'm going to be working with. We'll probably, you know, announce some of the names, and we'll see what happens. But right now, the main focus is Johnny and getting Johnny ready for February 6th. So all my energy is going into him right now. If I have to get back on a plane tomorrow, I will, and be out there with him for, you know, however long it takes. So, you know, you're definitely going to hear some announcements coming out, but, you know, we'll see. My work will speak, and you'll see guys looking better, and if they're looking better, most likely they're working with me than other people.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm looking forward to it because, like I said before about the IV ban, it's quite interesting to see how many fighters are going to take it serious now in the sense of getting their weight down and managing themselves a lot better. And they need guys who don't know the knowledge need help.
Or even fighting at the right weight.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
absolutely.
It's going to be super interesting. Yeah. The next few months will.
I think there'll still be a shift. Months. People might have a fight and go, Christ, I felt crap.
Yeah.
And then say, right, okay, I'm now going up in weight.
Yeah.
I mean, along with probably millions of others, expect Conor to go up in weight. I don't think he'll actually defend his title. I think he'll take a shift and go to lightweight, depending on what we see at the weekend.
But his body, it's all about his body, obviously, and how he feels. But yeah, I look forward to the future. And Luke, look, we've had you on before, but can you let people at home know, not only just people in general, but obviously if any fighters are out there are interested, how they can contact you, either social media, email, whatever you've got?
Absolutely. My website is lutrition.net. Social media, Instagram is lutrition. Twitter is at @Lou_Trition. Facebook is Lutrition. I have a supplement company as well. It's nutrition, nuetrition.com. And you could check me out there. And if you want to email me, it's lutrition@gmail. And like I said, I try to answer everybody's emails. If you follow me on Instagram, my goal on Instagram is to not post pictures of myself working out. It's to try to put information out there to help other people in the best way that I can. So if you have any questions, you could hit me up on there as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, go on, Mike.
Yeah, I was going to say, I promise you, I won't send pictures of myself working out either.
Yeah, it's in black. It's in black and white.
But damn, I look good.
But yeah, honestly,
about 10 years younger.
We look forward to seeing Johnny Hendricks evolve. Hopefully, to it's almost like a next stage.
And
of
how
his
he
career.
performs as well, because we know he can perform well. But wouldn't it be nice to see him be able to go full bore for those 5 rounds?
I tell you, I'm looking forward to it. And look, have a great Christmas. And thanks for coming on. Have a great New Year as well.
Thank you very much. You guys too. And like I said last time, I mean, you guys have my information. If you guys ever need help, want help, I'll be more than happy to give you guys information. I'll give you meal plans. If you ever want supplements, let me know, man. I'll get you guys some stuff. I love talking to you guys. You guys are great. There needs to be more people out there like you guys that are just genuine, good, honest, and are actually a pleasure to talk to. So thank you very much.
I've got many ex-girlfriends who would disapprove of that comment of more of me.
You just got to dig them up first.
Yeah, exactly.
Send them over to me too, and I have a way with them. I'll change their minds. I'll convince them. I'm very good with other people. I'm just not good with my own ex-girlfriend.
No.
But those supplements aren't legal.
Yeah. That's the Bill Cosby. That's the Bill Crosby line.
Bill Cosby's got a line of supplements for that as well.
Exactly.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sure.
Again, we'll put his stuff on our Facebook page. If you are a fighter and you want to speak to him, you can drop him an email privately and discuss stuff. So I suggest you do. Or if you just want to look after yourself a little bit better.
Yeah, general fitness.
Exactly. Now we're going to go to, obviously, the Aldo card. Aldo McGregor card. Talk about that. Let's have a
UFC
look.
194.
Let's have a look. Let's talk about... I tell you what... Kevin Lee, Leonardo Santos fight. Let's talk about that.
Yes. Yeah. You had a guy coming from one of the tough series.
Kevin Lee or Leonardo Santos?
No, yeah,
Leonardo
Santos. Yeah, I believe he came from
Mike, I don't
Tough
do
Brazil.
I don't do the
No,
fighting.
and I don't do Tough Brazil. But he came from the series. He came in and did what I didn't expect him to do.
I won't lie, I thought Kevin Lee, 2016, he'll be pushing for top 5 and pushing, big names.
Instead, he gets knocked the
out.
bejesus out.
A 1-2, bang, right in the chin, and he's out.
And then, we then got to sit and watch the 1500 metres as he goes sprinting off.
Yeah, he ran off into the crowd, yeah.
Do you know what? And it was one of those... Just how far is he going? He went where cameras don't go, There's no leads to go that far.
That was insane, that fight. I just wanted to mention that because of the...
Yeah, it was unexpected.
It was unexpected.
Totally
it was
unexpected.
hugely unexpected, And Kevin Lee now...
if Kevin Lee was to lose...
In the 150...
We would have thought a submission because...
Yeah.
But
in the 155...
He is a multi-jiu-jitsu champion.
But in the 155 division, it's a big blow when you take a loss. Yeah. You can have, look at Donald Cerrone, you look at Tony Ferguson, they've got 6, 7, 8, 9 wins. You can get a lot of wins and it doesn't do much.
You're still not there anymore.
But you lose one, you go down a hell of a way. It's like snakes and ladders. You go down a far way down that snake. And another fight that was insane was the Wally Alves against Colby Covington fight.
Yeah, Covington.
Two guys
who was unbeaten.
So was Wally Alvarez,
yeah,
Alves.
But it's
Alves.
not, yeah, but
both of them 8-0 and 9 now.
Yeah, and Covington I think he's got 5 finishes in his 8 wins.
The pair of them were going to lose. Someone was going to pop their cherry, and it was exciting to watch a fight that was a bit crazy in the fact that you saw Colby lose and get his first loss.
He seems to get beaten quite easily.
Wally, he's a big 170. That dude is jacked. He is a big boy for 170. I tell you what, I actually had when I looked at it, I kind of had my thoughts on Colby winning, and when Wally won, I took my hat off to him. But because they were both undefeated, you kind of, I don't know, you can't. I don't think that threw me off was you saw these Brazilians winning.
Yeah,
and you're like,
what?
Maybe that's a bit of momentum.
I was actually thinking that. I was thinking, Christ, we haven't had a Brazilian lose yet, and it was like bang, 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 bang. And then I thought back to another card where, what was the card? I was trying to remind myself, and I'm sure it was a a card that Conor McGregor was on, where all the other Irish that were fighting on that card lost.
Yeah,
and everyone was saying all the other Irish have lost. No one else has won, and then Conor was the only one that won that night.
Not a Boston card.
Possibly.
Yeah,
possibly.
Boston. Oh no, was it the one with Neil Sirion against Smolka?
Yeah,
that card.
Could well be because you did have Neil.
Yeah,
I remember thinking all the home fighters lost because you had Brad on that card.
Yeah,
and obviously it finished with
Sirion,
Conor, and then Conor walked out and pretty much.
We're gonna go next. We're going to go next to Uriah Faber against Frankie Sneeze.
Yeah.
Sneeze.
Yeah, so I was absolutely buzzing at this point. Up until this point, this was my highlight of the weekend because this was the first time I'd ever got to see Uriah Faber fight live, me being an event. And Uriah Faber I'm a long-time fan of his, and, it was a special moment. And you know what? The fight starts, everything sort of goes to plan. Uriah Faber drops him and hurts him, and you think to yourself, oh, he's going to stop him. This guy was tough.
Frankie
tough
can.
As.
Do you know what? Do you know what was crazy was the statistics were. I think that Uriah was a year older, But other than that, height was the same, reach was the same, everything was statistically the same apart from the age. And you were like, okay, the only difference then is the experience. And you're like, look, Uriah Faber, everyone was kind of like, oh, he's been given a gimme win just because he's on the card in case Aldo fell out or McGregor fell out.
Exactly, so they've got alternatives. Plus, also, they've got both guys who were on the Tough Series at the time. It was an easy sell.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, also, with that in mind, I don't know if it showed up on the TV much. Now, I'm guessing a lot of the Irish watched the last Tough Series, what with Conor being
probably
one of the coaches. Yeah. Uriah Faber got a fantastic
reception
from the Irish.
Yeah, it was.
Now, okay, not many people dislike Uriah Faber.
Yeah, I think
you know what I mean. He's Uriah.
I think even Adolf Hitler would like him.
He got a massive roar from the Irish.
He did. No, he did. The thing was, though, you watched him gas, and you saw. Well, I tell you what I noticed.
He kind of threw all these beams against that one moment where
and he was talking about after. So by the way, Frankie got the decision win, and Frankie. Uriah Faber got the decision win, and he literally hung on. He had to earn it. He hung on there a few times, and afterwards he was saying, "All right, me and TJ are done. Our friendship's done. I want to fight him or Cruz winner." Blah, blah.
Yeah.
I watched the Frankie.
I watched another fight.
Fuck's sake, I keep saying Frankie, so Frankie Edgar. I watched the Uriah Faber fight. That to me is a step off the guy that I used to watch. I tell you, age is catching up with Mr. Faber.
Yeah, and all those. Well, we see.
I think Faber is got to. I don't think people will like to admit it, but I was there watching it. I think I don't want to see Faber in that fight. I don't want to see him fight Dillashaw or Cruz.
Because you've got to think to yourself, like, it's not just the amount of fights. It's all those hours in training as well. Your body's got so much miles on it, and some of those, not all those miles go down in fights. Some of them go down in training.
And he's been fighting for a long
I think I was 4 when he started.
Long time. And do you know what the other thing was? His weight class isn't. I know it sounds that isn't designed.
He wasn't always in his weight class.
No. But
that's something to remember.
The weight class he's in isn't designed for his age, and it's not to be detrimental to the age groups. If you're a heavyweight, it's a lot easier to fight at 40.
You can fight into your 40s and over.
The higher weight classes you can fight when you're over, but when you're in the low weight classes, the idea is that you're super fast because you've got those fast twitch muscle fibers.
Yeah, you're old if you're hitting 30s, mid-30s.
And he's 36. I don't know when his birthday is, when he's 37. And you got to think 37, he's starting to really push the limit to that weight class. And I'm not saying he can't be fit and in shape, but I just don't think Faber... I'm not saying he's lost a step. I just don't think he's that same fighter he was.
Well, the thing is you look at the speed these guys move at, and you've only got to be half a click behind, and that's you getting tagged and not them.
Yeah.
Now, okay, he got through this guy. This guy might have been better than they thought on paper. Hats off to him. Yeah. I think he did his stock no harm.
No.
Frankie Saenz in how he performed. But I just think that Frankie, you've got a guy like TJ who is lightning fast. You got, I was going to say Frankie Edgar then, but I don't know.
I got Dominic
Cruz.
Yeah.
You got Dominic Cruz, who, again, probably believes that he has Uriah's number.
Yeah, Dominic's not lightning fast, but what Dominic is, he's a very technically efficient fighter. He has got the good movement, and he uses his striking effectively. He's very...
he's not guns out.
No, he'll pick his shots with very good precision. So he's very dangerous.
He takes his energy late into a fight.
He does. He's different. He's a different style, and I think that's what throws Frankie off. Frankie, I'm going to kill myself one day. Uriah Faber. Sorry.
We can all hope.
But anyway, so Uriah Faber.
So anyway, he gets through. He gets the win, and it sounds interesting. So we all would like to see that TJ fight.
I don't want to see Faber. I don't want to see Faber and TJ.
No, but what I mean is it sells because it was the one that...
I know, I don't...
anyway.
It's stupid though.
I think
Holloway Stevens. I enjoyed that fight in a sense of you watch Max Holloway again show why he is a contender for the title shortly. Frankie's ahead of him. I don't care what Max wants to say and what Max wants to do. Frankie's ahead of him, okay? And he is. But do you know what? He shut down Jeremy Stevens, who
super dangerous.
Is super dangerous, yeah. So I tell you what, the fight may not have looked as exciting or may not have looked as
it,
awesome.
It got a few boos.
But what you've got to realise is you are messing with a guy called Jeremy Stephens who will hit you once and he will knock you through that cage wall.
And this is a Max Holloway that, okay, whatever you want to say about Conor McGregor, you know, his knee and this, that and the other. Okay, he might have been injured, but he still didn't finish Max Holloway.
3 bloody rounds, yeah.
And, Max Holloway, since then, has not put a toe wrong, let alone.
And his knee wasn't gone the whole fight.
He wasn't 100% either.
No, his knee wasn't gone the whole fight.
Yeah, and do you know what? Apparently it went in the second round.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I mean.
Yeah, so with that in mind, normally Conor doesn't need the second round to get people out of there. So just putting that out there, folks, to anyone that wants to...
I think Max Holloway now is at that point where he'll have to have another fight before he fights for the title.
Yeah, because he is on the brink, but some people deserve...
I've said... I threw it out there about Jose Aldo against Max Holloway, but Jose Aldo needs...
They might not know...
Jose Aldo probably needs time to recover from that. Now, I've said Jose and Max, and then in the meantime you have Frankie and Conor. But what's going to happen, I don't know, because you don't know what's going to happen with Conor with the potential handbrake. Now, we're going to go next fight, which is Damian Maia, Gunnar Nelson.
Yeah, I was super looking forward to this one.
Do you know what? I was really happy that the fight turned out how we wanted it to, and it actually did go to the ground.
Yeah.
That's what I was happy about.
We got to see. And we picked Gunnar Nelson in this fight, we both did.
Yeah.
And wrong on us.
Yeah, no, the reason why I picked Gunnar Nelson was purely on the stand-up level.
Yeah, because I believe the complete game, I believe that you would have enough to survive Damian Maia.
I thought Gunnar Nelson would have snuffed out any takedown attempts to keep it standing, to use his striking to finish Damian Maia.
What I thought was if it ever did go to the ground, Gunnar would then survive the
onslaught,
ground attack,
yeah,
and it'd get back to its feet, and then Gunnar would then work the strikes.
But how did it go?
Well, Damian Maia basically showed you why he is an absolute ninja on the ground. That guy, he shot me. He shot me. You know, he did to Gunnar Nelson what Gunnar Nelson has been doing to everyone, pretty much. Since
now it didn't shock me. It didn't shock me what he did.
No, but
I will say that. Do you know why I'm going to say it? Because Frank Mir. I remember Frank Mir doing he was doing seminars, and he was talking about leg lock transitions. He was going over leg lock transitions, and he was talking about Damian Maia, how Damian Maia taught him about these leg lock transitions. He was training with him X, Y, and Z weeks ago about it. This is a couple of years ago, and Frank Mir said, he goes, I'm a black belt. He goes, I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he goes, I trained with Damian Maia, rolled Damian Maia. He goes, that's a black belt. He goes, I know what a black belt is now.
There's black belts and there's black belts.
Now, for Frank Mir to say that about Damian Maia...
Who is a legit black belt.
Frank Mir speaks for himself, but that said to me what kind of level Damian Maia is. So when Damian Maia did this to Gunnar Nelson, I was not flabbergasted. I was just watching a beautiful exhibition of how you see a true jiu-jitsu.
And do you know what was frustrating? From where I was sitting, I had a guy in my row who just was shouting out abuse, and yet, you know, we were in the presence of sheer genius. Yeah. And this guy here was saying, if I wanted to watch jiu-jitsu, I'd have gone to Brazil. I just wanted someone from Brazil to go and cash that check for him.
Should have went to
and just choke him out.
Should have went to the Eddie Bravo invitation on a Saturday. That's what I should have went to on a Sunday. Sorry,
I was going to say it's the following day.
So yeah, you've got. I tell you what, I think Damian Maia was on another level. That Gunnar Nelson. Do you know what? Gunnar Nelson wanted to test himself, and that's what he did. He went to the ground to test himself against the best, and I held my hand up to him for doing that. But you saw that Gunnar Nelson is so far away from a title shot.
Yes.
That really now you sit there and go.
That won't do him any harm. That I don't think.
I think it will. I think Gunnar Nelson is so far off the title shot now. You're looking at maybe he's not going to get a title shot.
Well, put it this way: you've got Gunnar Nelson, who, I mean, he did a shout out for a title shot afterwards, and you've got to say to yourself, I think he's right. It's just that he's in a super stacked division, the welterweight division.
You mean Damian Maia?
Damian Maia, sorry, yeah. He is in a super stacked division.
I don't think he deserves a title shot after beating Gunnar Nelson. Gunnar Nelson was
No. I think for going, what's he, 6
No, he's only lost to Rory. Damian Maia, because I can't. No, how can you say that beating Gunnar Nelson, who's not a top 5 fighter, gets you a title shot? No chance.
No. What I'm saying is,
you can win 10 in a row.
I'd like to see him.
Neil Magny went 7.
I'd like to see him fight one more.
He needs to fight one more. One more.
Oh yeah, one more.
Tony Ferguson, one more. Damian Maia, one more. Flat out, it's got to be one more.
So you could actually, it's so who would Damian fight next?
I don't mind who it is. I'm not sure. I don't really, to be honest with you, because it looks like Rory McDonald and Hector Lombard's going to be announced for London, so them two are out. Now Rory's already beat Damian anyway, so you'd probably maybe want to avoid that just because.
Yeah, you want to go over new ground, really.
You got Johnny Hendricks against Stephen Thompson, so that's already booked. So there's a couple of other top guys. Again, Matt Brown's recovering from injury, so depending on how long Matt Brown's out for, you can maybe stretch to Matt Brown.
Yeah.
Tyron Woodley, what are you going to do with I don't know.
Yeah, it would either of those fights. I think Tyron Woodley. Well, see, Tyron Woodley's been promised a title shot, isn't he? But
did he?
Yeah.
When did he get?
After Johnny didn't make weight.
Oh right, okay.
He was promised it. Literally, he was sick as a parrot after finding out that Johnny couldn't make weight.
Yeah.
And then, literally got a phone call, I think within 12 hours, saying, "Don't worry, you've got the next shot. You won't have to fight for the right to fight for the title." So, which came from Dana White, which doesn't necessarily mean, it's worth anything, because
I was going to say
Dana White has probably broken more promises this year than, I don't know.
Especially if all
the president's synod.
All I'm thinking is if this Lawler Condit fight went to a squiffy draw, let's say,
you might want to do an immediate. Yeah.
So that's why I think it's really tough when he says, "Oh, he deserves to win," blah blah blah. You just gotta sit there.
He promised him it, and so clearly that means, I'm sure, Miesha Tate's looking forward to her title shot.
Yeah, she can't wait for that. But anyway, I think Maia, like I say, one final way. We're gonna go to. I think we go. No, tell a lie. Do you know what? Gonzaga was the disappointment fight at the card, yeah? Of the whole weekend, sorry.
Yes, definitely.
Second would have to be Romero Jacare.
Do you know
Bar the knockdown.
At least there was a reason for it, though. And the reason, I think, is that Romero gassed himself. Now, it started...
What do you mean he gassed himself? He always gasses himself. He never can last more than one round.
That first round started so slow. So slow.
Yeah, and it was really speed up in the...
Pouring. I like Jacare sort of trying to pull guard and, doing anything he could, to try and get him down there.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, you pull guard because you can just kill him from there.
Well, exactly. And Romero, rightly so, just didn't want any of that. Any of it.
But the problem was, I would have liked to have seen a draw.
Yes, I think so.
Because
I definitely don't feel that Jacare deserved to lose. I thought he did enough to win.
No, do you know what it is? I don't think that. I think I suppose because I'm looking at it from not a judge's point of view, because they don't care about what the implications are. But there was two guys there who were basically fighting for the next shot at that title.
Yeah.
And I'm not being funny.
You might as well think of it as a title shot.
I did not see that as two guys fighting for the title.
But the way I see it is if you're told that the winner of this fights for the title, then that is your title fight. Because guess what? If you lose, back in the queue.
If those two fight like that in a title fight, I'd rather just go to sleep.
And don't forget, folks, this was 3 rounds.
I know. And Romero can't do 3 rounds. Like you said, he gassed himself out. No, Romero always gasses himself out.
I was going to say, he couldn't do 2 rounds.
No, he always, but he never has been able to. He always gasses.
So the worrying thing is how does he do 5 rounds against a live champion?
He can't. This is the problem. I feel like Dana White would be in the wrong position to put him in a title fight, but he probably will because Romero's age.
Yeah.
Romero's only got a small window and a small...
Yeah.
He's got an expiry date, which is soon. Do you risk losing a contender that you could... Or do you risk losing a contender then, because that's one off the list then, when you've got him there already, do you just throw him in? If he loses anyway, it doesn't matter. If he wins, it doesn't matter. Because he's going to only fight for so long anyway. So get him in, get the money out, off he goes, and they get the next contender in.
I tell you what I would do, if it was me and I'm matchmaker, I'm not the one picking up the cash at the end of it. If I'm matchmaker, I say, right, you guys, you go and do it again.
You could.
Yeah,
but
I'd say, come on, let's. I would say, in my eyes, there was a
more,
draw. I need to see a fourth round.
There's more in that fight. That fight should have. If it was 5 rounds, I hope we might have seen a bit more.
Put it this way:
nothing.
that third round got fun in the third round.
Yeah, because it's almost like the Mike Pierce for Flair.
Yeah,
they started to go, oh crap, we're in the third round. I figure better do something now. But look. That happened. It was probably the second worst fight in the whole card for me because I thought out of what it should have been, it looked a lot worse than it was.
I must admit though, Jacare has got some chin on him.
Oh
after being
being
dropped and dead.
Yeah,
he must have been dead for about a second and a half.
Oh, he's a beast.
And then I think Romero woke him up with one of those blooming fists that passed through his brain.
Title fight up next was Chris Weidman against Luke Rockhold. Okay, now. With Chris Weidman and Luke Rockhold, it was a case of 2 middleweights who were potentially... This is they've said it's possibly the best middleweight fight.
Yeah, quite even.
Because, due to the fact that they're both almost pretty much in their prime, you get 2 of the best middleweights you can find, because not every time you've had 2 guys who are in the middleweight division.
Yeah, normally you've got somebody fading and somebody on the
and I was there thinking, I'd probably possibly agree. I'd say that's maybe a top 3 in the middleweight title fights ever. That's probably possible top 3. Now, it was one hell of a fucking fight.
Oh yeah,
great fight.
I tell you what, the energy in that fight was fantastic and could have been main. I know they call it co-main event, but unless you're on last, you're not co-main event. You're you're second to last fight. There's only one main event. I don't care what anyone says.
And do you know what I loved? It looked even on paper, and it was even.
Yeah, do you know what? It was because the way I see things is, rounds only matter if it goes the distance.
Yeah.
And I thought that Weidman I think he was winning the fight physically, but losing the fight on paper.
Yeah.
So what I'll explain for anyone that doesn't understand is, right, your game plan is drain the hell out of your opponent. Like what it seemed Chris Weidman was doing. Make him work at a pace that he doesn't feel comfortable at. And Chris Weidman was doing that. Yeah, he was taking a few shots and what have you. But you felt to yourself like, if this can go another round, or I actually turned to someone and said, Chris Weidman wins this before the end of the 4th round.
It was 1-all.
Up until
round 1, round 1, round 2. It was 1-all. It was 1-all on scorecards, on paper.
I wasn't looking at that. I thought this fight's not going the distance.
No. But it was 1-all going into the 3rd round. It was equal. Both guys were basically beating the crap out of each other, right? For one out each.
It was a gutsy.
3rd round, you start to really see the fact that they were wearing each other down, and then, like you say, all of a sudden, Chris Weidman kind of thought, and Vitor Belfort.
I was going to say, what he should have done was he should have just carried on doing what he was doing.
Yes, exactly. But for some reason,
because
he suddenly
had the most gas left in the fight.
He turned into Edson Barboza. I don't know what he was playing at. Or Vitor Belfort. He did a crazy spinning back kick, which no one knew why he was doing. Even probably Ray Longo and Matt Serra was sitting there going, what's he doing? What the fuck's going on? And that cost him his middleweight title. Just think, one simple thing he did cost him middleweight title.
It all comes down to that.
And because basically Luke Rockhold got his back, ended up taking him, ended up in mount. Now,
yes.
How did you feel about the fight going to the end of the
do you know what? I wanted Chris Weidman to win. I said so.
No.
Was going to win.
How did you feel about the third, Mike?
I was going to say, even I wanted the ref to stop that fight. I thought.
Do you know how many shots it was, Mike?
Probably about 104. No. It looked.
How many shots do you think it was? That basically Rockhold had Weidman and Mount. How many shots were thrown, not landed? They basically. Not everyone was clear, but about 60 probably clear. But how many shots did Luke Rockhold throw?
35, 37?
88.
Oh no, sorry, landed. I was thinking.
No, 88 were thrown. 88 shots were thrown from Mount, and Herb Dean let that go till the end of that round.
Yeah. Now, okay, we're not standing where Herb Dean is, and Herb Dean, I do put my faith in Herb Dean.
What, 3 foot away watching punches getting thrown?
No.
The rules are, if you are not defending yourself intelligently and it's trying to get out, that fight's over.
I tell you what, Chris Weidman definitely can't say that the ref didn't give him every opportunity to win that fight. And
he somehow got out the round and went to his corner. I bet Chris Weidman doesn't even remember what happened in that between that 1 minute round.
No, he's going to have to tune in. So he's waiting for it to come out and Fight Pass.
Now, the next question I'm going to pose to you.
Yeah.
You're Ray Longo, Matt Serra. You've just seen him take
exactly.
You've seen 88 shots landed.
He's your family.
You saw that many shots land. He somehow makes it back to the corner.
Yeah.
What do you do?
They let him back out.
They let him back out.
What you should have done you should have said, "Sorry, bud, another day."
Yeah. Because he went out there, and what happened?
He got finished.
He took more punishment.
Yeah.
Now he could have had less punishment.
Put it this way: if the shoe was on the other foot, let's say if you were fighting, I wouldn't let you go back out.
That's what I mean. But
and I tell you what,
if
I would deal with any argument afterwards. Yeah. You know what? It's better to be in an argument and know you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Because, you know what? A title at the end of the day is just a bit of metal on a bit of leather.
Yeah.
That says that you won your last fight.
And he could always come back.
That's all it is. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's important, and everyone wants to talk to you and that. But you know what? People don't get much back from a grave.
How much of a difference can that bit of an extra round have done long term?
I tell you what, you go and ask Michael Watson and ask if he wished his corner had dragged him out.
Well, you look at explain who he is, Mike.
Right, okay, so Michael Watson. Michael Watson's a very famous guy from back in the 90s.
Boxing, by the way.
Boxing. He's a boxer who basically he was in a world title fight. And in the 11th round, I think it was, 10th or 11th round, he knocked down the champion and was on the brink of stopping him. And then all of a sudden, boom, he got knocked down himself. And he staggered back to his corner. And Jimmy Tibbs was in his corner at the time, I believe it was. And this haunts Jimmy Tibbs. Michael Watson was a little bit unresponsive.
On Queer Street,
Queer Street,
Rightly
which
so.
they've seen.
Most boxers have been,
He basically sent him back out for... it was 11th round, and he sent him out for the last round. He thought, all I got to do... And Michael Watson was ahead on points.
Just win,
so all he had to do was get through to the end, and he then got stopped in the last round, slipped into a coma, was in a coma for quite a while, had to have a blood clot removed from his head, from his brain, sorry, and nearly died, and is now... I mean, to say he's okay is a bit like saying the last mouse that gets brought out of the cage.
He's alive.
Yeah,
but
he's alive. Not... He can walk, but he needs aid.
Yeah, he's not. He's not.
He talks with a slur.
Yeah. So we're not. It didn't go to that extent. But what we're trying to say is, it sounds silly, but you don't know what that could have done. And I know for a fact that Chris Weidman. There's no way he was sitting in between that round and went, I'm guessing I need to go and get the win now. Yeah. And there's no he spoke clearly. I bet you if you went, can you count to 10 for us? I bet he went, pen, pencil.
Now forget the eye welts and all that, on the cheek. Yeah, he was in a mess. Forget that. That's
his brain.
That's skin and that. Don't worry about that. It's the brain. And do you know what? It's
he was okay. He was out of it.
You only know when it's too much when you reach too much. So you have to take sensible gambles, and the bigger picture is let's keep is fighter safety. So there's 3 people that had. I think they need to
address it. Yeah. So we got.
Well, tell you what, there's a fourth. A doctor can stop a fight as well.
Yeah. So we're going to go to the main event, which was obviously Aldo versus McGregor.
I think this might actually take longer for us to talk
about
about it.
Really quick. We talk really quick. We can get it out of the way.
I don't think I can talk that fast.
Do you know what, McGregor?
Right, so yeah, probably the most anticipated fight of the year. Yeah. More so than the Holly Holm Ronda Rousey, because that only became so big because of the result.
Yes.
It wasn't big beforehand. This one was anticipated because it had more money thrown at it than any other fight in UFC history and MMA history.
Yeah.
Obviously, the first cancellation, and then it comes round to the second time, so it is hugely anticipated, massively. They finally turn up there, they make weight, they get to the cage.
You know what? Everyone knows Mike, so we don't need to...
Yeah,
we know, Mike. There's no point in talking like that.
If you don't know, then well done for surviving your coma. You really need to catch up on some TV.
But what was beautiful was, you saw footage of Conor in the back warming up, and he was basically replicating what he did in the fight. So because he knew that when Aldo comes forward with his strikes,
he said he saw something. He said he saw something at the weigh-in.
He's very head... No. He's been...
But he actually said he saw something at the weigh-in. He said he saw him clenching up, and he said he felt that Aldo was going to load up on him very, very quickly. But the first opportunity he had, and he actually said to, I mean, if you watch the press conference, there's a chap in the crowd. I'm sorry, I missed his name, but he says, "Is it okay if I tell everyone what you actually told me before the fight?" And he said, "Sure." And he turns around and he says, "I feel," and he literally went through exactly what happened in the fight. He says, I feel that he's going to load up on me, because of all the build-up.
Basically, when Aldo was coming forward, he was going with his head, very head forward, like headstrong, and Conor literally just slipped back. He went back, threw a hook, left hook, dropped him. Now, he could have done a Mark Hunt and walked away. But he did a Dan Henderson and thought, I'll just make sure to confirm the kill.
I'll just make sure that rabbit's dead.
Make sure that rabbit's dead. And 2 shots to the head, which McCarthy came and rugby tackled McGregor out of the way, which when I saw it, I kind of went, McGregor's big, but McCarthy's big. And I saw McGregor get flown and thought, he could really hurt him.
Yeah, so we actually saw Aldo stretched out, unconscious, for the first time ever.
I tell you what, now that has shook the world of MMA.
13 seconds. It breaks the record in UFC
Ronda.
history.
Beats Ronda's record. Ronda's
having a shit second half of the year.
Ronda's going, I need someone else.
At least I've got me fastest finish.
Ronda's like, I need someone to come and chase me down. I need someone to run faster at me.
Now, before you say, there's been faster finishes, we're talking about title fights.
Do you know what? The implications of this are monumental in the fact of what could happen in the future. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about it. We won't go on forever about this because we could. Aldo shouldn't get a rematch, in my opinion. What do you think?
He needs time out. Whether it's one punch or whether it's 500 punches. If you have possible brain trauma, you need to go away and rest and heal.
Now, Frankie Edgar
definitely deserves the next title shot.
Next title shot. Now, if McGregor has broken his hand, I think time off. Obviously, let the hand heal up. It shouldn't take too long because it probably will heal up pretty quick. The little bone issue, and I think UFC 200's a bit far away. Yeah, because he could fight sooner than that. Because that's 7 months away. And if you're Conor McGregor and you've just won a world heavyweight, sorry, you won a world title. Do you know what? You don't want to waste time.
Well, he likes to stay regular.
Well, it's not that. It's 7 months. You don't want to do a Holly Holm.
No. Well, to be honest, Holly Holm doesn't want to do Holly Holm.
No,
which we'll bring up in.
She has no choice about it. But it's one of them. It's one of those matters where you think to yourself, I can see Conor then, like you say, possibly coming back against Frankie a bit sooner, and then setting himself up for UFC 200.
That's one possibility.
Or now I can't see him having the lightweight title fight first. And the only reason I say that is because if he has got the broken hand, and you see the winner, it depends on what happens with his results as well. And if you're Frankie again, because if you're Frankie, I don't want to wait till July either to fight defend that belt.
Let's be honest, Frankie could go next week.
Yeah, but if you're
you know what I mean? He took like 0 shots.
That belt's there waiting now for 7 months. If you're Frankie, look, I don't want to sit and wait. And Frankie's not young. He's 34 as well.
A belt needs 2.5 to 3 paydays a year.
It does, and I think it's a bit tough then because Connor's wanted 2 titles, and I'm like, do you know what? Unless you're going to fight often enough to defend it, I don't think it's fair.
Right, so just in case you're wondering what it is, Connor has basically said that he's always said that he wants 2 titles. Now,
which he's already done, Mike, in Cage Warriors.
Yep.
He wants to do it in the UFC.
Yeah, so basically what he wants to do is he wants to hold both at the same time, not vacate and move up. He wants to hold both, which, as often as he likes to fight, is possible. Now, whether Dana lets him do that, I don't know, but, you know, we'll see what happens. At the moment, Connor's doing things that I've never seen before. I've never seen another champion, even established, stand up there and hold his own press conference. Yeah. He literally stood there and held it himself. Okay, never seen that before. Connor is doing things that is new within UFC, and
2 titles?
No. You know, holding his own press conferences and stuff like that. You know, it's like
someone else has done that. Someone else has done that before. Anderson Silva did his own press conference.
Right, okay.
I remember.
I'm like,
sorry, Mike. I'm crushing everything you're saying here, but I'm just, I'm just like, hang on a minute, no, he hasn't.
Okay, so if he has done it, okay, so before he tested positive, pound for pound king of the world, and Conor McGregor win his first title fight, because forget the other title, like you can't become anyway, I'm not going to go into that one.
Yeah, look, there's
right, so there's loads of different things that happen. I personally think, what I think will happen is the featherweight title will become vacant and Conor will move up, because with all the IV issue and all the rest of it, I think Conor will move up and he'll challenge for what happens on Saturday. I think it's a lot more lucrative if Cowboy wins, but we can't tell the future.
You can't predict the future, but it would be more lucrative. I think you're right. I think the cut for Conor, it's way too much to 145, and that will damage him. He does
have sunken eyes like you wouldn't believe. Like yes, he looks dreadful, but what he has always had in the past is an IV, an option. This time, I say always, was the first. In fact, yes, it was. It was the Conor card that he had against against Mendes was the first UFC card without IVs.
Now we're going to say this: we're not saying that they can't check you if you're not taking IVs as well. By the way, because
they reckon there is a way of checking.
There is, but there actually isn't a proper way. So you can do it and get away with it easily. Well, now, I'm not saying he didn't, but I'm not saying he did. But the thing is, Conor doesn't want to waste his time cutting down all the time. Now, if he goes and gets a title shot at 155, again, like I said, it's all about how bad's the breakage, if it is true, whatever. But anyway,
and also, how does this fight finish on Saturday night?
Yeah. So
look, if it's super close or a draw,
yeah,
you know what's going to happen again, don't you? They're going to rematch it. So
we don't. Yeah. So we won't predict what's going to happen. We have to wait till next week. Now we're going to go to our next guest, who also is going to lend some knowledge and his opinion onto this bonanza of UFC fights. It's Jeff Wagenheim. He writes for Sports Illustrated, Washington Post. He's one of the quartet on the MMA Beat. I'm sure many of you have watched it and listened to them. He's the man with the shirt. Sadly, we don't get to see his shirt on here. It's a shame. It's an absolute utter waste. But here is Jeff chiming in with a valid and very good thought process. I'm sat here now with a cup of tea, relaxing after what was a very tough week. I feel like I've went through 5-minute rounds in the UFC. How do you feel, Jeff?
I think I went through 5 and then 3 as well. I feel like I went on 5-minute rounds for 3 straight nights. How about that?
Yeah, it was. I have to admit, it'd be a lot tougher for you because I was watching it more as I'd say like a fanboy. But yourself, you have to do the write-ups. How, from your perspective, how tough was it? Doing 3 days in a row.
Well, you know what? I'll be honest as well. I don't have the same job as a lot of people who cover the sport. Some of the folks, like the guys that I do that I'm on the MMA Beat with.
those guys have to really pay attention to every single fight, right down from the UFC Fight Pass prelims. There were 34 fights in 3 nights, and they had to pay attention. Most of them had to pay attention to pretty much every single one of them and do something, whether it was write up a short piece or just there was always something. My job, really, both for Sports Illustrated and for the Washington Post, I really write about. Both places have said to me, "We want you to write about big fights," and the way they define big fights is championship fights. So really, there were 2, and so I got to watch as a fan for 2 nights and almost the 3rd night, and then when the last 2 fights came on, that's when I really had to put on my more, I had to put on a different hat and watch with a different set of eyes and be able to write about it. So in a way, I was kind of where you're at in a sense, but and even that way, even just watching them as a fan, it was pretty exhausting.
I was going to say that you didn't have much to write in your last fight, really, did you?
You know what? At least this time I was sitting here at home and got to do it. I remember when the first Fox card came on, and it was Cain Velasquez defending his heavyweight title against Junior Dos Santos. And I flew out to California, was there for a couple days, and just like this, I was asked just to write about the championship fight, and it was 64 seconds long. It took me longer to get from the press room to my seat at cage side than it took for the fight to end. And there was nothing really before that to write about. At least nothing that SI wanted at the time. At least this time we had a 13-second finish in the main event, but we also had a co-main event that had a little bit more going on. And also the truth is, even with only 13 seconds, there was such a big story, so much that there was to be told, so much was to be said, that it didn't matter that it was only 13 seconds.
No, it didn't. I suppose when I watched the fight myself, it was nearly 7 o'clock in the morning. So for me, it was kind of glazed eyes, but it was just kind of. I felt a little bit let down. I wanted an epic battle, a fight to remember at first, and then when I had time to think about it, I kind of sat there and went, I'm happy with it. I was happy with the result in the end, the way it went down. I thought, do you know what, it's fine. I had a mixture of emotions, I suppose, and I think maybe I wanted more from Jose Aldo, but there's a lot, Novo Niao, we'll spit that word out. They haven't had the best record since the drug testing's coming out. I'm not allocating that Aldo's done any tests, but one thing that's coming is the IV bans, and it's very prominent in certain fighters with having to get their weight a little bit lower and looking after themselves, and especially with a 5-round fight, they can't cut themselves as much as they would do in the past. Do you feel that this may take an effect in future fights as well as the ones that have happened this weekend?
Well, I think we would be talking about this. I think this might even be the topic of the day if the result had been the opposite. Because you probably watched the weigh-ins, and Conor McGregor looked like a skeleton out there.
Yeah.
He looked terrible. and Aldo looked pretty good at the weigh-ins, right? Mm-hmm. So if anything, you're thinking, okay, well, they can't use an IV to get fluids back into these guys. That means that McGregor's going to be a mess tomorrow night, and Aldo's going to be okay. Well, look what happened on fight night. McGregor came out to the cage looking beautiful. He was back to his old self, and he was looking confident and relaxed. I mean, everything that he said he would be, he was. And Aldo, who had been pretty relaxed during fight week and looked good. His spirits were good at the weigh-ins. Well, he walked out to the cage and his jaw was clenched, and he stood in the octagon, looking down at his feet and not moving, stiff. I mean, it was kind of the opposite. So I feel like the whole IV thing, while I recognize it's a big deal, we sort of got the opposite kind of result that what we would have expected if we were thinking what the effect that it was going to have.
Yeah, I am interested to see if Conor can handle so that. Well, I suppose we can talk about that's the main fight. It's the repercussions. What happens with Conor Now, there is reports of him possibly having a broken hand, but at the moment, do you know the one person I feel right now, and I feel like hugging, is Frankie Edgar? Because there's nothing that man can do. That man can't do anymore, yet he can't get what he deserves, I suppose you could say.
Well, you know what? He might get it, because even before the fight, if you go back and listen to some of the things that Conor McGregor said, which at the time seemed almost unfathomable. No matter how much of a fan of the guy you were, if you go back and listen, if you were listening to that at the time, he was saying how he was going to just go out and destroy Jose Aldo, which, you know, nobody had touched Jose Aldo for 10 years, so it seemed kind of absurd that anybody would think that. But here is this guy who's so confident he's going to do that. That's what he said he was going to do. And then he said, and after I destroyed Jose Aldo, I'm going to go up to the lightweight division and win that belt, unless Frankie Edgar goes out and has a great fight against Chad Mendes and you know, finishes Chad Mendes, or he made some comment about how it was sort of like the ball was in Frankie's court. If you go out there and if Mendes had won the fight, then forget about it, because Conor's already beaten him. And if Edgar had won the fight, but it was kind of a split decision or a tight decision or disputed, or a fight that was not that exciting, well, then it would be a good sensible move for both Conor McGregor and the UFC to go right ahead and schedule that lightweight title challenge, especially if it happens to be Cowboy Cerrone, because you can imagine the build-up between Cowboy and McGregor, all the talking that would go on. So, but Edgar kind of, I think, put a little bit of was a bit of a fly in the ointment there, because he put on a spectacular performance, and he got that great knockout. And so, in a sense, I think that I would not say that he's out of it. I'd say that it's kind of a 50-50 deal. I feel like a lot of it depends on how this weekend's lightweight fight goes. I feel like if Cowboy Cerrone wins, there's going to be a little bit more excitement about the idea of McGregor and Cerrone. And Dos Anjos, for all of his skill and he's already beaten Cowboy Cerrone, for all of what he's done and beating Anthony Pettis, his style is really interesting to watch, but I don't think that he has the same kind of profile that's going to generate a lot of excitement for him to defend against McGregor. And it might happen, but I feel like it would be, I feel like the balance, the scales would balance a little bit more in favor of Frankie Edgar. Of course, if Conor decides that he does want to fight, he will fight Frankie Edgar, which I think is probably what the UFC would prefer. McGregor then has a little bit of a bargaining chip and say, well, you want me to do that? Well, let's do that fight right in my hometown in Dublin.
Yeah, maybe try and get a stadium fit, and he keeps harping on about the stadium. And Dana's negotiated with that and said it's the it's not the fact that we can't do it in a stadium, it's the effort they have to put into it. And I can see where Dana comes from that perspective, but like you say, it does really fall on this fight, because if Cerrone wins, Cerrone's got that mouth, and kind of like Conor, he can sell a fight with just his talk, and Cowboy doesn't hold back with what he says, and Rafael dos Anjos, he is quite a respectable fighter, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I suppose the debate comes in with Aldo wanting a rematch, because he'll say, look, I got caught, it happens, everyone can have an off day, and in 10 years I've had one off day. I believe that if I came back I can win. And then everyone will say, well, Ronda Rousey's getting a rematch. Almost everyone gets an immediate rematch. Maybe Aldo will want to put his foot in there, and it's a bit unclear. And I think, like you say, I think the UFC are waiting till this weekend is over before they start hinting to what could happen in the future.
Yeah, I suppose that they're waiting, but I kind of feel like they've already made some hints a little bit that just. I don't know. It may just be me reading into things, but it just seems like the UFC did not treat Aldo with the same kind of respect that it treated Ronda Rousey in the wake of the loss. I don't know if you saw online that the UFC put up some of the locker room footage of Aldo both before and then when he came back, kind of despondent, came back to his locker room, and he had a towel over his head. He was just sitting there motionless in his locker room. I mean, I feel like that's kind of a low blow for a guy who's been your champion for a lot of years. And I think Aldo kind of didn't do them any favor. I think there was still some resentment over him dropping out of the summertime fight, but in a way, I think he kind of did them a favor. If this same thing had happened back in what was that fight going to be in July? If this happened back then, there was always going to be that question of, well, Aldo had hurt ribs, or let's say something happened with McGregor had an injury as well back then. This was two healthy guys, and that's the way it should be. And Aldo did the right thing by dropping out of the fight over the summer. Now we got to see a clean competition between two guys who are healthy, and that's the way it should be. But I don't know if the UFC looked at it that way. I think they're kind of looking at they're insisting that Ronda Rousey get a rematch, and I think in some ways she is less deserving, entitled to a rematch than Aldo. Aldo got clipped with one shot. It happens to the best of them. And not taking nothing at all away from McGregor. He's the guy that connected. It's not a lucky shot. He knew what he was doing. He threw the shot. He connected, and he finished the job. Great for Conor. But that was one shot that Aldo hit. Look at Rousey. Rousey was pretty much picked apart for a round and a half before Holly Holm finished her, and it was a much more defining. I think we got a better picture of how those two stack up than we did in this fight. I mean, I'd love to see these guys go at it again, but I think that certainly McGregor again. I think McGregor deserves the right to defend that belt in his hometown, and if they can make it happen at Croke Park, make Jose Aldo. You want the rematch? You're going to come out there. They made Chad Mendes go down to Rio, so why not make Jose Aldo? Go to Dublin.
Yeah, I know. I think they could do it with Joanna Jędrzejczyk as a co-main event. I think they could certainly do that.
Yeah, man. I'm buying that one. But again, by saying this, we do kind of sort of shove poor Frankie Edgar to the side, and he's very much deserving. So I mean, I feel like Conor in the aftermath of the fight, one of the things he said, one of the things he repeated several times was, I've got options. I love options, and I like that he recognized that he has options. It's not just a matter of him sitting back and letting the UFC dictate to him who's going to be next. He has some options, and even if they decide, if they're the ones that want to decide who the next opponent is, and really the truth is that it shouldn't be the champion who picks an opponent. It should be the sanctioning body or the promotion who picks an opponent for him. But so be it. Let them pick the opponent, but he should have some say in where that fight takes place.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. It should be a slight balance for the fighter, and the UFC, of course, they wanted to go to Vegas because it's money. They know what money it can bring in. But again, I think, like you said, they'd make a ton of money if they went to Ireland. Now I want to talk then about some of the results from the fight night. Okay, so again, like we said, there's over 30 fights, so it's hard to remember all of them. But one performance that stood out more than any was Rose against Paige Van Zandt. That was 5-round mauling, to be honest, and she looked like a different person compared to what I've seen her fight before, and I was absolutely astonished by that performance. In Paige, just not for one moment was she in that fight.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like I was kind of tricked with that one, because I was. I've seen. You probably, if you watched when Namajunas was on the Ultimate Fighter, that was probably the one season in recent years where I've actually watched the fights, because it was leading to a championship, and she looked really good on that show. She didn't look so good when she went out and fought Carla Esparza for the belt, but prior to that, she looked really, really good. And I remembered that, and I was thinking, kind of instinctively thinking, well, this is a bit of a jump for Paige Van Zandt. But then, in the lead up to the fight, I noticed that Van Zandt was the favorite, and it sort of, I feel like it kind of infected my thinking, and I started thinking in terms of, well, Van Zandt's the favorite, so how's Rose going to stack up with her? And so by the time the fight came around, I was kind of expecting Paige Van Zandt to take her, and then when it started unfolding the way it did, I was like, oh yeah, this is a fighter who's looked really good. Other than her last one, she's looked really good, and Van Zandt is still new at the game, and boy, do we see that. I mean, her toughness was was certainly notable, but in terms of her ability to really truly compete, it was kind of a little bit similar to that Demi and Maya fight that we saw on I guess that was, let's see, was that Saturday night?
Saturday night.
Yeah, that one, where again, I give Gunnar Nelson all the credit in the world for trying to for saying, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy and I'm going to try to compete with the best jiu-jitsu guy out there, and he went for it doggedly, but boy, he got schooled just like Paige Van Zandt got schooled by Namajunas.
Yeah, for me I think that's a great thing that happened to Paige. I think Paige, she was riding that momentum wave, and I think she kind of believed in the kind of almost hype that she had behind her. And I thought, when I watched Paige, she is a scrappy opponent. She will fight to get that position, and she'll win the position battle because of her will to get there more than some people will. But Rose just snuffed everything out. Every time she tried to get there, Rose just was technically on point and was able to stop her with a technique rather than just sheer will. And I think for Paige, she needed she needed it.
Because she was so tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Paige now can go away for 6 months off. She can go, because now there's not going to be that hype behind her. She can go away for 6 months and quietly just build herself up. Get that strength in so she can compete with some of the fighters. Because I think she was a bit outmuscled in that fight as well. And I think if you put her against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, like she talked about, could you imagine a face at the end of that fight? Never mind a fight with like Rose hit her hard. Imagine how hard Joanna's going to hit her in the face.
Yeah, that would have been a disaster. I mean, I guess all I would say about Paige and what this does for her, I feel like it would have served her well if she'd had even a few little glimmers of a few moments where she was able to get Rose in trouble, but it seemed like it never really happened, and it seemed like at every single turn Rose had an answer for her. So I feel like that's the one thing. I think we're gonna see what Paige Van Zandt's mental ability, mental state is. How is she able to put that all behind her? Is she able to sort of bounce back mentally? I mean, it's really that mental side of the game as well as her learning some more skills.
Yeah, I hope that like you say, she can go away from it and just accept that it's part of the sport. You've got to learn. You've got to stand there and go, okay, I'm not at that level. I'm maybe just around the top 10 mark. I'm not top 5. I need to go and sharpen myself up, and I hope she does. But for Rose, she now has to, she's obviously, I don't think she's ready for a title shot yet. I think the next title shot is obviously that Dana White said it. It's Claudia Gadelha against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. That is the most logical fight there is out there in the rematch, and I fully look forward to that fight anyway. For Rose, you could put her, maybe they talked about maybe her and Tisha Torres.
Yeah, maybe she gets a rematch with Esparza, and because she seems to have figured out a few things since that loss. Or who knows? I mean, I think that she's definitely on the rise, and she's going in the right direction. The other thing though, you were talking about the lessons learned, and I hope the UFC learned a little bit of a lesson there too, because this kind of thing wouldn't happen to other fighters who are at the technical level of Paige Van Zandt, because they haven't been pushed to the extent that she has been pushed. Mm-hmm. She's really a person who probably deserves to be not quite in the top 15 rankings, but sort of out in the periphery of that. A very good fighter, but just not quite at that top level yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the UFC was pushing her because she's a beautiful young woman. That was really the thing. I mean, same thing. We're gonna start seeing something happen with this Sage Northcutt, this 19-year-old handsome young guy with all kinds of flashy stuff going on. We'll see. He had a little bit of a difficult fight as well. He ended up winning it and persevering. But I think the UFC sometimes has to tap the brakes a little bit and say, okay, well, let's let these people develop in a more sensible way, instead of just throwing them in there in with the Lions.
Yeah, exactly. For example, they put her as a main event. They put them so high on the card. I don't see why they couldn't have put them lower on the card. They could have still given them that kind of exposure to, not that maybe extent, but some. I am agreeing with you. Me and Mike have spoke about this before, where they see that I love I love the UFC. I love MMA. You know, I compete in it. I watch it. I do love it. But the UFC, you know, they will treat people like cattle in the sense of they will milk them dry until they need them, and then they will push them away. And it's a business. I understand that's what the UFC is. But I think with someone that young, like you say, that could literally some stuff like that can absolutely ruin a young kid. And you don't want to see it. And I think that you're dead on there. They should be a lot more careful with these young people. They should nurture them in a better way. You know, rather than look at them as a way to get money, they should treat them like human beings more.
Yeah, you know, they have to. That's certainly, you know, that's something that all businesses really ought to be paying attention to. But you know, the UFC, you know, pretty much does what it wants to do with its athletes, and you know, the athletes have not banded together. And not even indicated much interest in banding together in any kind of association or fighters union or anything that will kind of even the playing field a little bit. So you know, it is really up to the UFC to make the right calls, the right decisions, and ultimately it's to the company's own interest. I mean, look what they did with McGregor. You know, here's a guy that was a young talent, and they took a little bit of heat by the way they matched him up early on. In fact, I would say that, you know, even myself, I would see some of his early fights and think, well, you know, they're really kind of they're bringing him along very slowly, and they're not giving him someone who's going to just try to immediately take him down to the mat. They're giving him opponents that he can show off against, that he can show his skills against. But by doing that, it got him. Certainly his confidence got built up, and it also got the fans excited to watch him, and he got better, and he got to the point where he now is the champion of the world and beat a guy who hadn't lost in 10 years. And I think in that case, the UFC is to be commended for bringing him along correctly. And you know, I don't know whether it's because McGregor is who he is, you know, and he helped kind of keep things moving at the right pace. But you know, they're not going to get it right all the time, and luckily they don't get it wrong all the time either.
No, yeah, you know, we can have a go at them all day. Like, for example, I love the discussion you guys had on the last MMA Beat about the UFC kit, for example. You know, that you kind of said what everyone was thinking earlier, so you know, you can't get everything right, is the best way to put it, and Reebok certainly do kind of empower that.
They managed to get everything wrong, though. That's different.
Yeah.
Although not necessarily, because look at this past weekend. You know, there was some people who talked a little bit about how McGregor came in with the green shorts. You know, and this was something that other fighters were, you know, they weren't tailoring shorts or any kind of apparel to a fighter, and particularly with colors and all that. And that was a good thing. I mean, that, you know, now if Conor hadn't got out there and won, then we would be, you know, Reebok would be getting all kinds of criticism. But they ended up doing something and learning that this drew some attention. And maybe they do the same thing when they get some other fighters who are prominent fighters, who are well known, and you know, have a big public profile. You know, you tell your apparel to draw the attention for the right thing instead of misspelling names on them.
Well, yeah, I did think that. I did speak to a couple of friends about that. I said, because they're both, in theory, because I know he's interim title holder at the time, because they're both champions, I did say, are they both going to wear black? Because I did wonder what McGregor was going to wear, and I suppose they came to that logic sense of the green and the amount of Irish fans that were in there. One fight, I think, as well, that a performance from the weekend, I think, because you got to watch it as a fan, was Barboza versus Ferguson, and Ferguson is really turning into that lightweight title contender.
Yeah, he's sort of he kind of reminds me, not really in the way he fights, but he brings back some memories of when John Jones first came into the game, and again, not because of the way he fights exactly, but in that Jones used to do things that you'd think, that can't work. You know, some of the spinning crazy stuff that he used to do, that he really, you know, if you watch John Jones now, he doesn't really do that stuff anymore. But when he first came up, he was doing all kinds of very creative stuff. And Ferguson also was doing really some creative stuff that I thought just wasn't going to work. And you know, some of that stuff where he just sort of tumbles forward and you know, appears to put himself in a bad position, but really doesn't. He kind of even when Barboza seemed to know it was coming, it still worked. So yeah, I mean, I think that Ferguson is rising quickly, but it takes two to tango, and I give a lot of credit to Edson Barboza. He definitely gave some trouble to Ferguson, and he threatened him a few times. So that was the fight that if I was thinking about what was the best fight of the whole time, the whole weekend, that a significant fight at least, and one that was competitive. That was the one that I thought was pretty competitive, even though it ended with a submission, I think, in the second round. While it was going on, it was a lot more competitive than a lot of the other fights.
Yeah, it was. I think I woke up my neighbours with me shouting at that fight because it was constant. It was just great to watch. Like we said, we talked about Frankie Edgar before. Then, what do you think? I think personally for Chad Mendes, he needs to go and take a little bit of time off. That's 2 KO finishes now, and he recently signed that deal with the UFC. He was. I think he needs to just go away and just have a bit of time to himself to recover, because I don't think you can take 2 knockouts in 2 fights and be the same guy. I think he definitely needs to go and take away maybe 8 months out of the game and just let himself heal up.
I'm always leery when I see a guy take another knockout after he's already had one, and here's the thing though. I even though yes he was knocked out, just like Aldo was knocked out, and in both cases those were pretty quick finishes. And I guess I get more nervous about fighters who take a more sustained beatdown, like for example Chris Weidman. He took the end of the third round, which I'm pretty astounded. As much as I love Herb Dean as a referee, I was pretty amazed that fight went into a 4th round, because at the end of the third round, I rewatched the fight, and Weidman, or Rockhold, after he had Weidman down in the last minute or so, threw 88 straight punches and punches and elbows to the head. Now, he didn't land every single one of them. Some missed entirely, and several of them hit Weidman in the arms. But of the 88 blows to the head, I would say that probably a good 60 or so, maybe even more, landed on his head, and he was badly battered. And I worry more about guys like that who take a sustained beating. I think of Junior Dos Santos in the second and the third meetings with Cain Velasquez. Then you can think of some other people too. Those are the ones that I get more nervous about. At least with Mendes, in both of his knockouts, they were pretty quick. But you're right. You don't know. You don't know what the concussions are all the rage now. This is the thing that we talk about in sports now that we never really did talk about until recently. You think about not just with MMA, but with any sport. Nobody talked about concussions. It was always he got his bell rung. That's what we always say. In football, he got his bell rung, so he's off on the sideline for a play. And then once he'll get back out there and try to play some more. And nowadays it's a different game, and we're starting to recognize the effects that can be long term. So even though to me visually it's more bothersome to watch somebody take a sustained beat down. You're right. It might be that something, just even 2 knockouts like that, would be something that he needs to step back and stay out of it for a while. He definitely needs to reassess things for sure.
Yeah, because again, with the quick knockouts, it can affect obviously the brain, and I think, like you say, it comes back again to the IV bands. Because they're not potentially rehydrating how they used to be able to. There is that worry that they can become a bit more tendency to get knocked out, but with, like I say, with Mendes, with his situation, because he's had 2 losses in a row, and he just seems like he's always the bridesmaid and never the bride. He just can't quite get, almost like Uriah Faber in the UFC. He always keeps falling short at that belt. And I feel that maybe if he did take a bit of time away, it might help him. People have said that maybe he should go down to 135 and bits like that. I don't know if that's the case necessarily.
What's he gonna do? Cut one of his legs off? I mean, the guy doesn't. I don't know that he's
massive.
he probably has a hard enough time getting to the weight class he's in.
Yeah, he is absolutely yoked, but I think that for Mendes, I think a bit of time away it would definitely help him. I think he can come back a lot more refreshed, and he can maybe, just start again, maybe fight guys from maybe rank 6 and work his way back up to a title shot. I don't think he should maybe be throwing himself into those kind of fights again, but that's not for, obviously, me to say. Health-wise, I think the UFC, I know they're investing in this anyway, the kind of brain damage, and they're doing a lot of research into it and stuff like that, which is great for the fighters. And I think that maybe the UFC should maybe talk to guys when they have maybe 2 knockouts or a couple of knockouts, say, look, just go away for a while and come back, because you might get a better fight. And like I say, now, by the way, with the IV bans, ladies and gentlemen, I am saying that they do have a ban, but no one's sitting next to the guys for the full time that from when they've weighed in to when they fight, to monitor them if they do have an IV in. I'm only saying that because Mike has been witness to a coach getting into an elevator with IV bags after the IV ban and asking if he was a nurse or a doctor, and obviously we knew what he was doing with his fighter. So it's clearly still going on, because no one's going to monitor them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. How do you test that? You can test for PEDs, but how do you test for whether someone has been given a saline solution or whatever it is that they're rehydrating with?
Yeah.
It definitely is. And also, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of going at things the wrong way. It's saying, well, you can't we're not going to. It's been somewhat established that IV is a good way to rehydrate, and so they're going to say, well, we're not going to let you rehydrate in the proper way. We're just going to say you can't do that, so that'll be your incentive to not cut as much weight. But I don't know that people really look at it that way. I don't know that they really will still cut weight in a better way or not go down an extra weight class. I think it would be a better thing if they did something a little different, or they made them. I know that it would not be practical to do day of fight weigh-ins, but have some kind of a system where significant weight loss is not part of the equation here. That look at we've talked about Frankie Edgar. Here's a guy that cuts hardly any weight, and look at how fresh he is when he goes out there and competes. I mean, I know that analogy doesn't work. I mean, look at Conor McGregor. He's a skeleton at the weigh-ins, and then he goes out there and looks fantastic too. So he's figured something out. He's figured out the answer, but not every guy can figure that out. And it would just be a safer sport, I think, or be one element of making it a safer sport would be to somehow come to grips with how much weight is safe for someone to lose in advance of a fight.
No, it would, Jeff. I admit, because I cut down to I had a fight at 170, and my body just went into reject. It rejected me big time. My kidneys went. The cramps were everywhere. I couldn't even walk 50 yards without having to sit down to get my breath back. I couldn't even eat. When I tried to eat with a knife and fork, the cramp would the cramp would stop me being able to hold anything, and my body just rejected it. And so when that happened, it kind of helped me kind of accept that my body can only go to certain limits with the weight cutting. And I think, like you say, people shouldn't be able to maybe drop so much. And I think it's one of them ones where they need to maybe have a. Maybe they should, I think with wrestling, don't they do it with wrestling where they in the States where they measure their body weight and they say you can only cut so much down. I believe, off the top of my head.
I believe there's some. Yeah, I think there's been different ways that they've tried to address it. I'm not familiar with all of the nuts and bolts of it, but I know that they've done some things because the light heavyweight champion in the UFC, Daniel Cormier was all set to compete in the Olympics, and his body shut down during a weight cut. So it's not unusual. This happens to people. We just saw the fighter in the ONE FC who tragically died as a result of, or at least following his attempted weight cut. This is a significant thing, and I hate to think that something that tragic things have to happen before we really act, but it is kind of the way way we operate. And if anything, look at the message that the UFC was sending out when Ronda Rousey was at the top of the world, and the one person who was thought to be able to challenge her and compete with her was Chris Cyborg Justino. Well, the UFC would not agree to have that fight happen at a catchweight. They insisted on her cutting down to 135 pounds to meet Rousey because she was the champion there. When Cyborg, I think walks around at something above 160, I think.
170 so, she does, yeah. She's about 170.
Yeah, it's kind of, so, it's really not sending the right message. And, they would have been, if they wanted us to say, look, these are two women in two different weight classes, forget about it, that's fine, I'd accept that. But then to suggest that she has to cut down to that weight is, I think, kind of just a bad message.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy the way they suggested that. I was blown away. I thought you would make just as much. The UFC would have made just as much money having it at a catchweight at 140 than they would at 130. That it wouldn't have made a difference. It was just the fact that the fight, if the fight happened, it would have. That's all people cared about. With the IVs, what I spoke about with Mike is I said, why can't he have, after the weigh-ins, have two separate rooms? So you have obviously your blue corner and your red corner, and they have nurses there themselves. So they take a blood sample before. If you want to have an IV. They say, you put your hand up and say, I'd like to have an IV. They take your blood, so then they have it on record. Then they have their own IV bags there, the registered nurses, so they're all there. And then they IV you, and then they take a sample. And obviously later on when they do a sample, they can say, right, okay, well, here you go, that's the test results. We know what you were before, and we know what you were after. I don't know why a simple little solution like that would just potentially save fighters from potential brain damage, and obviously just the health.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is, I guess in some ways, I mean, I think this was what the U.S. Anti-Doping Association that was agency that was that had the IV ban, if I'm not mistaken. But it's something, unfortunately in the U.S. the most powerful athletic commission in combat sports is in Nevada, and I say unfortunately because it's the most irresponsible and kind of amateur hour athletic commission. There are athletic commissions in California and in New Jersey that aren't perfect, but they do things with a little bit of sense. But the people in Vegas, I probably get in trouble for continuing to say this, but I've said it on the MMA Beat and others. My colleagues have said the same thing. I just feel it's a corrupt organization that it has nothing to do with really handling a fight game, but it really has everything to do with making the most money it can for its state. It does it in mixed martial arts. It does it in boxing. Banning certain fighters, banning a guy like Nick Diaz for smoking pot. This is a really big performance-enhancing drug. I can see that's really going to go out. That's really going to make you bigger, stronger, faster. And then at the same time, they're handing out promoters' license to the likes of Floyd Mayweather because he makes them a ton of money. Mm-hmm. So this is what happens in Nevada, and so they, without really even putting any deep thought. I mean, the thought that you put into your scenario that you created there, that makes perfect sense, but that's not something they're even interested in. They're just out there trying to make the most money, and it's kind of criminal, really. It
is. It's like, I think I heard someone say that the Nevada State Athletic State Commission need someone to look after them. They need someone monitoring them while they monitor everyone else. It is like that. Like you said, that there's so many stuff there you said that just. I've read it, I've seen it, and I just can't believe it sometimes what they do and how they act. Especially considering Anderson Silva only got a year for what he did, and it just... Yeah, so... Yeah. But they know how much Anderson brings, but...
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
I know. Do you know what?
Sitting here for 4 hours of me ridiculing them.
Jeff, we like to pull people into rabbit holes. It's great. That's what we do. We already tapped on it briefly before, Maia versus Nelson. Damian Maia he is one of the guys who I feel, can take the least amount of damage I've ever known. He's so elusive, but yet he's probably got more ring time than a lot of the other fighters, and he's been hit the least. He's such a smart fighter, and he's just short of that title shot again. I know he's asking for one. I think he needs one more fight, and then he should get it myself. What that performance he did, that showed as well the difference between a black belt and a Damian Maia black belt as well. It was just majestic, wasn't it?
It really was. Now, I'm not a jiu-jitsu practitioner, so a lot of the technical stuff, while I love it and I watch it, I'm not one who can say, well, this guy, if he only moved his arm to the right instead of left. But I watched that and I kept thinking that Gunnar Nelson was doing the right thing over and over again. The kind of thing that probably works for him when he competes with against anybody else. But Maia just always had an answer. And there were times when, if I'm not mistaken, there was some moments where it looked like Maia was riding a little too high, and Nelson was trying to do something that would get him off of his back, but it just wasn't working. He just had certain little tiny adjustments that Nelson just couldn't. Nelson had no answer for, and it was really beautiful to watch. I mean, I'm sometimes you go to UFC fights and the fans are impatient when it comes to a grappling match, but this one you didn't hear. I might be wrong. I should probably watch it again, but as I was watching it live, I don't remember there being any boos or any kind of discontent coming out of the crowd, which is pretty unusual for a grappling match. People tend to not want to watch that stuff. They want to watch the rock'em sock'em robots. And but people, I think, even out in the crowd were, maybe they knew going in that this is Demian Maia, we're going to see a grappling match. But people seem to be fascinated by watching a guy. Really, it was like I credit Gunnar Nelson for trying to do this against him. It was almost like Gunnar Nelson became the canvas, on which another masterpiece was painted.
Yeah, he was. It was beautiful to watch. I was just in awe, really, and I hoped that fight happened the way it did, because Gunnar Nelson, I felt that Gunnar Nelson his style is almost Machida-ish, where maybe Maia wouldn't have been able to get hold of him to get him down with that footwork, the in and out movement from Nelson, and he might have been able to catch him with a counter strike. And I thought, please, I wanted that fight to happen, because I still feel let down with the Frank Mir and Josh Barnett fight. I just feel like we've missed out on a kind of Maia Nelson fight where it just was on the ground. I wish that Meta Morris or even Eddie Bravo Invitation would just get Mir and Barnett together and just do grappling only, because that's just a question for me. I just want that answered.
Yeah, I agree. I would love to see that. Ultimately, it comes down to both guys wanting to do something, and you see when most people go to the ground with Maia, they don't do it usually. They usually don't do it willingly, but and all their energy goes into trying to get off the ground, and that makes a lot of sense. I would say that if really the smartest thing to do in a fight with Demian Maia is to do everything you can do to get off the ground. You've gained a lot of ground by just getting off the ground because he's just too good there. But again, to Gunnar Nelson's credit, he really wanted to test himself. He really wanted to see what he could do, he came up short. He got really dominated in that fight. But I have a lot of respect for that guy, and I think that this is a fight that Nelson is going to benefit from. The next time he goes out there and he faces somebody who's not Demian Maia. Gunnar Nelson's going to be the one who's going to be doing all the dominating on the ground.
Yeah, and Gunnar Nelson looked in really good condition going into that fight. He looked a lot better than he had done before as well, and I reckon I would not be surprised if Gunnar Nelson tried to maybe work with Demian Maia on a grappling side of things, because I would love to just have 15 minutes of rolling with Maia. Of course, I would have a sore neck and arm and leg, and I'd be tapping out for probably about 15 minutes of the whole thing, but it would just be you just have to be a sponge with Maia. I feel though as well for Maia, he needs probably one more fight. Either, I'm not saying when Hector Lombard is back, you've got like the likes of Hector Lombard, Tyron Woodley, someone like that would be a good matchup for Maia to just finish off, or maybe the winner. Oh no, that's a bit too late because you got Stephen Thompson against Johnny Hendricks coming up, which is an absolutely tremendous welterweight bout as well. I feel that Maia's maybe one more fight away from that title shot.
It's interesting because 3 of the 4 people you mentioned are also wrestlers, also grapplers. So it's always interesting to see a guy who's a high level wrestler going against a high level jiu-jitsu guy to see whose ground game will persevere. I mean, basically, it puts the wrestler mostly in a defensive position because the end result of his game is to pin somebody, and that doesn't really that doesn't work in MMA. And whereas the end result of the jiu-jitsu guy's game, of course, is to submit, and so the wrestler, all he really gets to do is to avoid submissions. But still, it's really interesting. But then you talk about Stephen Thompson. I don't know. That would be a tough one because he can strike from long range, and I think that would be a really tough matchup for Maia to. That would be a tough matchup because he'd have to get inside of the guy and get him down, and then once he did, I think he'd have his way with him.
Yeah, he'd just be a backpack again. If I say Jose Aldo versus Max Holloway, what would you say to that?
I'll watch it. Sure, I'll watch it. I think that that's a fight. I mean, Max Holloway's a guy who's rising, and his time to get a title shot he's building toward it. But he's already had his opportunity to fight McGregor. In fact, he fought a McGregor who was injured. So it was the one sort of ground and pound McGregor we saw, and I wouldn't feel bad. Like sometimes you feel bad when you see a guy who's rising suddenly get a fight that promises, or at least might most likely is going to send him back down the pecking order a little bit. But in this case, here's a guy who's already had his chance to compete against the person who's now the reigning champion. And so if he wants to get another chance, what better way than to beat the old champ?
Yeah, I just think that for Holloway, he's a bit stuck, like you say. There's not too many guys out there now who's left to fight to get that title shot, because can't have him against Frankie, because to be honest, Frankie deserved the shot before him. So I think he's just behind Frankie. If Frankie gets that shot, then it would be Holloway. If you're going to give Frankie the shot, I think Aldo should face Holloway. One fight that I think let everyone down. Obviously I'm not talking about the Gonzaga fight. That was just 15 minutes of pain. But the one fight was Jacare versus Romero. I was gutted that fight was not the fight I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, Romero's a funny guy. He's really great for about a round, and then he this fight he wasn't as visibly gassed out as he has been in the past, but only because he had Jacare so hurt that all Romero just kind of stood on the outside from the Romero just, but you could tell Romero did not have the. Think about Jacare coming out of the second off his bench, off his stool, I should say, for the second round. I mean, he had 60 seconds to recover from the beatdown that he took in the first round, and he was not recovered. And that if Romero had a little more energy in him, he certainly would have a chance to get a finish, but he just didn't have it in him. And I don't know. I feel like that was one of those fights where there was no real winner in a kind of a way. I mean, I felt like Jacare lost, so he, now I know that a lot of people felt like Jacare should have won. There were some people who scored the fight for him. I actually thought that the fight was either Romero or a draw, because I thought the first round should have been a 10-8, and so the worst thing that could have happened to Romero in my mind was to get a draw if they gave the second and third rounds to Jacare. And I thought the third round clearly was Jacare, and the second round, flip of the coin. So I don't feel like Jacare was robbed there. And then Romero, well, yeah, he got his arm raised, but do you really think that you put him in there with a guy like Luke Rockhold, who's got cardio for days? I just don't think that unless Romero does something pretty spectacular and finishes him pretty fast, I just wouldn't think that he would have a good. I wouldn't like his chances against a guy who's like Rockhold right now.
That was my point to you. Really, it was how can you? I thought that was the fight to decide who was going to be the next challenger, and I just didn't see it. I just didn't see two guys who were wanting to win to fight for that belt. It seemed for me, it was a very much it was deflated performances. I know obviously when Jacare got hurt, everything was a bit upside down for him, so he was probably just went back to kind of muscle memory and safety mode. But I thought that like Rockhold, or even if Weidman had won, I thought I couldn't imagine a pair of those guys. Well, Romero going in with them. I just can't picture the UFC putting Romero in. But then again, I can see them doing it because they know Romero hasn't got a lot of time left, and it's one of those ones where they know he's not the spring chicken, and maybe they need to get him in to get the title shot. So then once they've got that challenger. He's a challenger, so once they've given him that shot, and even if he does lose, at least then they can go to another challenger who's maybe not as old, and they can keep going. I think that's impossible, but then again, you've got the Vitor fight, which Rockhold wants, which I don't want to see either myself, because I just think, Vitor now being a welterweight, now that he's not on his chicken and rice, I think it's a fight that I don't want to see.
No, I absolutely have zero interest in that. And when I first heard Rockhold mentioned that, it was on the post-fight show on Fox, and Michael Bisping was right there on the panel, and I know that Bisping and Rockhold are not great buddies, but I felt like that was a good opportunity for Bisping to say, listen, don't give that title shot to Belfort. You know what? You and I, well, I'll do something. I'll do you a favor. I'll fight Belfort. I mean, look, Belfort knocked out Rockhold. He knocked out Bisping. They both have a gripe with him, and I would love to see, Bisping have a go at him. But I'm not really interested in seeing Rockhold have a go at him because he doesn't deserve a title shot, and so Bisping, that was a good opportunity for him to say, look, I'll do it. I'll take him out for both of us, and you just go and defend the belt, and I'll see you later on after I build myself back up and get my title shot. I mean, I think that was Michael's. Michael likes to talk. That would have been a good chance for him to kind of like almost sideways.
Yeah, kind of build bridges with Luke Rockhold in a way, but I think you're dead on. Obviously, because Bisping's going to fight Mousasi in London, but. Yeah. I think Rockhold, he's not in that top. I know that I don't listen to the rankings because the rankings are just not. They're a bit of an abomination, but I don't see Rockhold as ever getting to that title shot level again. TRT Rockhold, Vitor, yeah, definitely. TRT Vitor, he was super impressive, but I just can't see it happening again.
No, I think his time has passed. I mean, he can win. He can win some fights. There's no doubt he's not finished. But in terms of competing against the top guys, well, look, even if he is able to do it, I just don't think that I don't think he deserves to do it. I don't think that he deserves to get the opportunity to do it. Yeah. I think he would need to work his way back up. If he believes that he still has that in him, okay, great. Do it. Undergo drug testing like crazy, and try to work your way back up. And maybe you fight. Who knows? I'm not even sure who the next person for him to take on. And then maybe eventually, if Bisping takes care of Mousasi, maybe they end up meeting. And if Vitor can beat all these guys. Sure, then let's see it happen. I just don't see that. I don't see that coming to fruition.
No, I'd like to see Machida and Vitor myself. I'd like that fight to happen. I think that'd be quite an interesting fight.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it seems like Machida's been on a bit of a downslide too. I mean, Vitor is more doesn't look physically the way he used to, and he's been fighting more in the he fought 45-year-old Dan Henderson, I guess was the last one. So it's I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with him. I sort of look at the guys in that place, and I'm like, whatever matchups the UFC wants to make there, that's, when they're looking at it, what's a fight that maybe will draw a few eyeballs, and maybe some, if you throw it early on in a main card, and maybe people will pay attention, or maybe you make it the main event or co-main event of a Fight Pass or a one of the other fights, non-pay-per-views. That's fine, but I'm more interested in knowing who the UFC is going to put in there with the champion, and I want to make sure that those decisions are made based on the merit of who deserves those title shots, not just on who's going to make the most money.
Exactly, that's the worry. Yeah, you just think, is it the name that's getting him the title shot, not the credentials? Yeah, like Vitor lost. He got battered by Weidman. I know Vitor had a little kind of burst at the start, but after that he just got absolutely mauled, and then he beat Henderson. I think Henderson only had one win in his last 6 or something like that, so it's not, like you say, it's not something that you can sit there with the credentials to say I deserve another title shot. Now, Weidman, no, mention him, not the smartest move, doing that spinning back kick, which literally kind of changed the shape of the fight. It was I had it down as 1-1 going into the third round. I had it as 1-1. I thought they both had absolutely clobbered each other in both enough in both rounds to kind of balance the damage. And then the third round, I thought Weidman was starting to find his range a bit, and then all of a sudden he did that. I don't know what he was doing.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I would love to know what he was thinking of that. I guess it's not thinking exactly, but what it was that caused that to happen with him. You sort of wonder about fighters when they pull off something that's kind of a crazy, some kind of a crazy move, and then they end up getting finished. I mean, you think back to when the second fight between Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva, and he throws that sort of spinning back fist, the kind of thing that he never does. Now, I know Weidman does sometimes throw big kicks, but this was not a kick that you normally see him throw. And I also know that's the same kind of kick that knocked out Rockhold for Vitor, I believe. So I don't know whether that was something that he trained for, but I don't know. It just seems to me that that in this fight he needed to just, he was the sort of more brawny guy. He was the guy that needed to get inside, grab a hold of Rockhold, and sort of try to bully him a little bit. And that was not really the way to do it. And so it was weird because I sort of looked at it almost like a desperation move when there wasn't a need for desperation unless he was hurting a little more than we realized. But he was taking a lot of body shots. Maybe he was feeling more damaged and just felt like he needed to do something a little bit crazy to change the course of the fight. But like you said, I had it the same way. I felt like the two rounds, both the first round was I thought pretty close, but I would have given it to Weidman. The second round I think was clearly a Rockhold round, but it was not both of them were 10-9 for each guy, and then the third round all of a sudden the bottom fell out.
Yeah, and you almost think if he hadn't thrown that, we might have ended up with a 5-round great battle. We would have maybe seen similar to the Weidman Machida kind of thing with the last round. Could have been potentially 2-2, and then you just would have seen two guys, pouring their heart out to show you how much they want it. And I'm just like, now Weidman's got to go away, and he's got to have a long rest after that. Like you said, 88 smacks. Now people may, like you said before, they didn't always connect, but for people at home who don't know, a 4-ounce glove, whether it's blocked or not, it's still a 4-ounce glove hitting you. It's still that power's still coming through your hands to your face, and it's not like his head is not. It's going to go backwards. It's hitting the ground. It's not. There's nothing. It's it's just getting bounced off like a basketball. So, I think he does need to just go and have a little bit of time off. I could see, you can easily see it happen. I can see Rockhold defending his belt in the meantime. And I can see Rockhold coming back and maybe beating someone else and getting a title shot straight away. Because I think Weidman's that talented. I think obviously, he's with two guys with Ray Longo and Matt Serra, who I can't praise enough on a coaching level. Those guys are fantastic in what they do, and the pair of them just work so well together. I I see Weidman coming back again. By the end of 2016, I can see Rockhold Weidman too, easily.
You know what? I'd love to see it happen again. I'd love to see it happen. I'd love to see it, but I also think that you're right. I agree with you 100%. I think that Chris needs to take some time away from the gym, and heal himself up physically, mentally. His not just his brain in the sense of the beating, but kind of the mental side of it. There's just like, this is a guy who's undefeated, and when you lose it for the first time, it does some things to you. So it'd be good for him to take some time away and get his head together, so to speak, and see what happens when he on the other side of it. Yeah,
you're right. Ryan LaFleur came back and fought against Mike Pearson. His first loss was handed to him by Maia this year. Just got him. He came back, and it looked like LaFleur. I thought he dominated Mike Pearson in the striking game, I think, but he played it safe enough, so he got the win. I think Ryan LaFleur did the right thing when he came back. I thought it was. I thought that was a very intriguing match between Pearson and LaFleur, because obviously Pearson had been out for a while after being Paul Harrest with his ankle, and then Ryan LaFleur again. It's a psychological battle. We've had a guy called Rob Dawson, who is a mind coach. He calls himself a mind strength coach. We've had him on the podcast before, talking about the aspects of the psychological warfare on maybe losing and winning, and what it takes. And he works with Danny Roberts, who made his debut against Nathan Coy from the UK. He works with him, and it's very intriguing, the weapon that is the mind. It's a huge weapon that it's not very much talked about in the sport. It's a huge weapon.
Yeah, well, just think about you compete in the sport, so you understand better than most of us. But for those of us who don't compete in the sport but watch it and write about it, just the difference between being at cage side but being outside of it, as opposed to walking inside there, and the only person in there is that referee and an opponent. And that's just that. So aside from the actual what happens once the fight starts, just that stepping in there is a some people have to do battle with themselves, especially if they've suffered a defeat. Now there's you can't question yourself. You've got to have the confidence that you're the one that's going to come out on top. Otherwise, why would you want to be in there? So it's I think that's why some of the most successful gyms are the ones where they have people that focus on that. You think about a guy like Greg Jackson, whose entire mission between rounds of a fight is to calm his fighter. Just get that fighter to breathe and to calm down, and all the strategy that he and Winklejohn are going to pass along, that comes maybe in the last 30 seconds of that 60-second break. But for the first 30 seconds or so, it's all about just calming the mind and calming the body, and that's that's the best medicine, really.
Yeah, Faraz is great. I think he's got a degree in psychology. Faraz Al-Harbi as well. He's a brilliant one for it too.
Absolutely, yeah. Another guy like that. It's these are the guys who are at the top of the sport in their own way, and not every one of them approaches it the same. Certainly, a Ray Longo is not going to approach the way a Greg Jackson is, or even the way Faraz is. They all have a different way of approaching their fighters, but it takes something more than just knowing how to throw a left hook. You have to know how to manipulate. Well, manipulate sort of usually a bad word, but just maneuver the mind of your athlete to have that person achieve everything they can achieve.
And we spoke about Longo, his guy Sterling, Aljamain Sterling, who again put on a fantastic performance against a very tough, experienced fighter in Johnny Eduardo. Sterling was beautiful with his submission, got a guillotine finish. You got him with his contract now fulfilled. You have Henderson, who recently had his contract fulfilled. Dustin Poirier is on his last fight again. When he fights Duffy, that's his last one with the UFC. There's a handful of fighters that are now starting to maybe test out waters with the free agency. I for one, I'm all for this, because I think not only do fighters find out how much they're worth, but I think the UFC will start to realise that they maybe need to start upping their pay grade to where the fighters can not only be, once they've paid off their bills, etc., can have money to spend, so to speak. They can live on what they're getting paid. You look at Sage, who got 40,000, and he got 40-40 because he won for his second fight. I don't know anyone else in the UFC who came in after one fight and then got that kind of increase in pay. I'm quite for this free market testing from fighters.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sort of two minds about it. On the one hand, everything you say, I'm on board with that. I like that. Ultimately, they call it prize fighting for a reason. There has to be a prize. It's not just about going in there and fighting. There has to be a prize at the end of it. There's got to be some pot of gold at the end of the rainbow there, and so I'm all for fighters getting paid as much as they can possibly get paid. Again, I mentioned earlier the idea of fighters having some banding together where they can negotiate with UFC and with other organizations a little more collectively, so that some of the inequities can go away. So yeah, but in whatever way they can do it, I'm always happy when a fighter gets paid. The other side of it, though, as a fan, one of the things we're kind of spoiled when we see that almost all, not all, but almost all of the best fighters in the sport are in the UFC, and so therefore there's always the possibility that if you want to see the best two heavyweights go at it, well, it's gonna be probably in the UFC's title fight, and if you want to see the best two light heavyweights, well, it's gonna be it's generally a UFC fight that's really going to pit the best against the best, and the more fighters start testing the market, and we start seeing some people wandering off to Bellator, or the World Series of Fighting, or ONE FC, or other promotions that might pop up, that will start creating a scenario back in the days when there was the UFC and there was Pride, and everybody thought, well, Fedor Emelianenko is in Pride and he can beat all the UFC's best heavyweights. Oh no, he can't. We've got Randy Couture. He could beat that, and it was all just talk about who was the best guy. You never really were able to see who the best guys were. So that side of it, I feel in a way we're kind of spoiled by having all the best fighters in one place. We have an opportunity to see the best fights. But so it's kind of like, we've got conflicting interests. On the one hand, I want to see them all in one place. On the other hand, I want to see them test the market, and I want to see them get paid the most money they can get paid. And however we can make those two things happen at the same time will be amazing.
Yeah, I feel like it's a bit of a monopoly the UFC have, because like you say, they've got the best of everyone. So they've got that monopoly of going, well, if you don't fight here, you won't get recognised as being the best. But I think I suggested it. I said to Mike, it would be lovely if everyone was just a free agent anyway. So they could, if they wanted to go to, for example, to Rizin, this Rizin card, for example, let's say Fabrizio Verdun went, you know what, I'd love to go and fight Verdun on that card. Which, I know it's the rematch, I know we've beat him, but the money that he could make from that fight, from Rizin, would be probably a lot more than he will get for this Cain Velasquez fight. So this rematch that's been booked, I just think that it would be lovely if guys were almost free agents in a way where they could maybe go off and do that. And you might see, for example, you got Liam McGeary, who's the light heavyweight champion for Bellator. I'd like to see him maybe get a shot. He might go, do you know what, I'd love to go and fight someone in the UFC, not necessarily Daniel Cormier, but maybe a Gustafsson or someone like that, or a big name. You got KSW down in Poland. There's a handful of promotions out there that you might see a couple of guys cross paths, and that's just something for me anyway. I think if there was a little bit more freedom for fighters, they might get a bit more pay. Even if it was like a one fight in their contract, every contract they sign, at one fight where they can go anywhere they want, fight whoever they wanted, and it just to make that extra payday.
Yeah, I think that would be a good system if it could work. Now what you're talking about is a lot more like the boxing model, where the championship belts are basically all the sanctioning bodies just name a champion if you're the WBC or the WBA champion, that's the belt you wear, but they're not the ones who are promoting the fights. They're getting a sanctioning fee, but they're not promoting the fights. Now that works in the way you're talking, but what's the first thing you think of when you think of boxing? The first word that comes to my mind is dysfunctional. So on the one hand, the UFC is, as the leader of MMA, has really created a lot of order and really helped the sport grow in an orderly fashion. And I think the things that you're talking about would be great. I would love to see that happen, but I would hate to see that start to happen and then all of a sudden the sport become more like boxing, where because like what would be the incentive for some random promoter to, like say you're going to get Liam McGarry fighting against Gustafsson. Let's see who's the best light heavyweight in Europe. So we're going to take these two guys and have them compete. Well, what are you going to do with your undercard? Are you going to fill it the way that UFC filled the 194 undercard, or are you just going to basically try to cash in with one big fight? So there are definitely good things and bad things about that system. Pretty much every system you can come up with. I mean, ultimately, the system we have now actually works in a lot of ways, with the one exception being that the UFC basically pays what it wants to pay, and the fighters, because they do not negotiate collectively, they have very little power. Most of them have very little power. Conor McGregor, he'll have some power. Ronda Rousey, she has a lot of power, but your average fighter who's fighting on the preliminary card, those guys, sort of take what they can get, and that's the kind of thing we really, I think we agree that needs to change.
Yeah, I think it is one of them things. The structure, it's just that's like a dream for me, is that fighters can maybe just that one-off fight every night. Like you said, like back in the day, if you could have had Fedor and Couture just meet, if Pride and the UFC back in the day could have negotiated and said, look, we'll have a card, UFC versus Pride. You get your guys, we'll get our guys, and we'll have the main event. It's going to be Fedor, Randy, and we'll just make that would have been just one of the most amazing moments of everyone's lives, I think, if that happened. But this is just fantasy talk. I think obviously it's a business. They want to keep their business themselves, and stuff like that can't happen, because if everyone in Pride won, then the UFC wouldn't be very marketable. Then they wouldn't have the best fighters. So I understand that as well. Jeff, I'm gonna let you go, because I know you. I know I've kept on for a while, but this is what I wanted to talk fighting. It's been absolutely fantastic having you on. Before I let you go, though, Jeff, can you let people at home know what your social media stuff is, so they can check out what you've been writing about? Because obviously you don't just cover MMA, you cover other sports as well. Can you just spit all this kind of stuff out for everyone?
Sure. And before I say that, John, it's been my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. I really enjoy this. This is really a lot of fun. So I'm thank you for inviting me on. I'm on Twitter, and I have a very creative handle. It's my name, basically. That's Jeff, Jeff Wagenheim, Wagenheim, all pushed together. Jeff Wagenheim, at Jeff Wagenheim on Twitter, and you go there. Usually, I will share different stories I write. I'm writing MMA stories nowadays. I'm also writing for the Washington Post, and Sports Illustrated and the Washington Post. I'll be covering the big UFC fights generally, and in addition to that, I will occasionally share things that I write for the Boston Globe, which can be I write some college sports here in the U.S., and I write some arts features, and I write a co-author a parenting column. So I do a lot of different crazy things. Keep myself busy.
Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, just give him a follow on Twitter, like you say, and you can have a read of what work he does. The reason why I got him in is because I've kept an eye on what Jeff has been doing, and I value what he says, and that's why I got you on, Jeff. I feel sorry that Mike isn't here. Sorry, mate.
We've got the MMA Beat too. I should always mention that we're off now for the holidays. We won't be back on until right after New Year's. But the MMA Beat, that our weekly show with Ariel Hawani as the host, and also the other panelists are Luke Thomas and the great Chuck Mindenhall, the man with the hat, and myself. So that's always a lot of fun as well. Generally on Thursdays here in the U.S. Here where I live, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Where you guys are probably would be, let's see, that would put it around 6 in the evening over there where you're located, right?
No. About 6. Yeah, about 6. You're right. Yeah, it would. But if you do miss it, ladies and gentlemen. They do post the video of it on YouTube, so you can go on there, and they also post the audio on. They have on all. I think it's on all networks. Really, I think it's on iTunes, SoundCloud, and everything else. Really, isn't it?
Yeah, but you don't want to do the audio because we're all such really good-looking guys. You want to go with the video. That's the full experience.
Well, it's your shirts as well. You know what? They got your shirts, Chuck's hat, Luke's beard, and of course you got. I suppose you got Ariel as well.
That's right.
Exactly. So, Jeff, honestly, thank you for coming on, ladies and gentlemen. You are going to have Jeff back, I feel. And I think, Jeff, I'd love to have you back on in the future as well, after New Year. It would be great to talk to you again about, obviously, goings-on in MMA.
You betcha.
Okay, there was Jeff chiming in. We will, again, I do suggest you jump on to the MMA Beat, listen to what they do. It's great stuff. I've been a fan of it for a long time. And, of course, we'll post his information on our Facebook page. We're going to go now to the UFC. Orlando is happening. Okay, good card, good fights. We're going to talk about the fights up now. Okay, so we have got. I'm going to talk. Mr. Leon Edwards is fighting on that card. Now he's been training AKA. I thought he might have fought last weekend on the card, one of the free cards last weekend, due to the fact that
they had a few guys.
Yeah, but he's fighting Kimura Usma, the guy from Tough who won Tough in the Black Zillion ATT one.
Right.
The only reason I know that is because of the fight itself. Because I knew about the money getting the winner. The Black Zillions won it. He's from Black Zillions, and they won all the money or something like that, like a few 100,000 or something like that.
To your gym. And
to your gym. That's the only reason that his name stuck out. And I went, oh, that's who that is. So that fight's happening. I would push more for Leon Edwards, but I have to say he's got the personality of a cucumber. So we're going to move on to Jim Elias against Cole Miller. Cole Miller is one of them guys who just...
I don't think
he's ATT boy, and he just can't string that run together. And he's got like the most legit ground game. Dude is a nightmare on the ground. And do you know what? He's got that really unorthodox length for the lanky body. That's a problem on the feet, and he just can't get that nailed. It's almost like fighter IQ just isn't quite there. Those are just two fights I'm sticking out there that are quite. I think they might be worth like little notes. Now, gotta go to the main card. We have Randa Marcos against Karolina Kowalewski. Yep, that'll do. She's a Polish fighter. She's 7-0. Most of the fights have been with KSW. She's recently just signed, obviously, to the UFC. She is one of them girls that's, being fed from Europe. Great to see it. Marcos, this girl, 1-on-1 in the UFC. Shall I go first, or do you want to go first, Mike?
I don't mind. I'll go first.
Do you want to go first? Go on then.
Yeah.
Go on.
Now, I am going to pick Randa Marcos.
Why are you picking the Randa Marcos?
The reason is, her most recent loss is to Jessica Penne.
Right, okay.
And which was a split decision loss.
Right, okay.
Which, in hindsight, is a good result. Fantastic result.
Right.
So that means somebody thought she won that. Having said that, now the other girl, although she's unbeaten going in, she's fought for her home promotion, and her last two fights, I believe, are split decision wins. Mm-hmm. So in somebody's eyes, she lost those fights.
Yeah.
On her home promotion. I just feel that might be the edge. So, she possibly lost 2 of her last 3.
Right.
So yeah. Whereas the other one, she possibly won her last 3. It's when you get split decisions, that means that it was squeaky close to the fact that it could be a win or loss depending on who was there on the night judging.
No, okay.
Yeah. Okay. I just feel the experience and. Yeah, I would just say to save money goes down on to Randa.
Okay, I've gone for Marcos.
Oh right, so you agree.
I went for Marcos purely because of, I think, partly you're going to get octagon jitters kicking in.
Yep.
But also, she's got to come over from Poland to the States, which I think will take a toll of the travel, making a debut. And also, Marcos trains at TriStar, okay? She's got one hell of a team behind her, okay? I think that level makes a difference. She hasn't been stopped yet. She is fighting a hell of a fighter. Now, I believe this girl as well, actually, no, I am right. She's got 2 or 3 kickboxing victories over Miss JJ. I say kickboxing or Muay Thai victories over JJ. So, this girl's legit. This girl's legit, okay? So, I'm not saying she can't win this fight, but it's not a Muay Thai or it's not a kickboxing. It's an MMA bout. So, Marcos will have her T's crossed and her I's dotted because she has got the man himself, Faraz Harvey, who be breaking down that girl like you wouldn't believe. Now, next fight we're going to have up is Mr. Nate Diaz versus Michael Johnson. What
a sick fight!
Do you know what? When a fight got announced, I was like, that's cool. Nate Diaz is back. I like that. I'm happy. But at the same time, after Nate Diaz's last performance, where he rocked in £7 overweight, was it? Nate Diaz's last fight was like 7 or 8 pounds overweight.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't weigh in on. He didn't come in nowhere near him.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't that keen. Then I saw the picture of Nate Diaz, and that dude looks like I've never seen him before. He looks like he's...
You're not talking about the picture on the poster, are you?
No, it's the one I posted on our Facebook page, on Twitter. He looks in phenomenal condition now. I'm still picking Michael Johnson now, because Michael Johnson is... He's just quicker with the... I just think he's... I just love Michael Johnson as a fighter, and I think he's an excellent guy to really put that top 5 and push. He's with the Tony Ferguson. I think if he beats Nate Diaz, you might see Michael Johnson versus Tony Ferguson, or even Khabib or someone fighting for the next shot at the title. I think it's going to be. I could see that, and I know Nate Diaz is great, and he is, but I just can't help but go with Michael Johnson.
I'm going for Diaz.
Yeah, even though he's a heavy favourite, Johnson, I can't help but go for Michael Johnson still, because you just can't. The problem with Nate is, you don't know what Nate's going to be.
Yeah, you don't know which one.
You can't sit there and tell me what Nate Diaz is going to turn up.
Yeah, it's I'm going for Diaz. I think timeout might do him a bit of good.
It might have done. Yeah.
Yeah, it might relight his fire, and because I think around about that time. I don't know, I think he probably needed a break, to be honest with you. I think there was a few frustrations that we weren't seeing and a few we were seeing. So, I think he seems re-energised, and I think, not that these guys need energising, because, on their day they can...
I just feel like Nate Diaz, he isn't the lightest on his feet, and he is very much a pressure fighter, but Michael Johnson's got the footwork and the angles to really come in, go for Diaz and get out again. And one thing about Diaz is, I know for a fact that dude won't check no leg kicks, and I know Michael Johnson is going to probably take on board with that and go with it, because Rafael dos Anjos chewed up Diaz's legs, absolutely chopped them apart. He did in the last fight. So I'm telling you right now, I just get the feeling that Michael Johnson's obviously done his homework. So we're going to go to the co-main event, which is Junior Dos Santos versus Alistair Overeem.
Yeah. Heads or tails?
So go on, mister.
Right, okay. I am going to go... Right. Hopefully, the guy hasn't had the fight bashed out of him.
Okay, you're going for Dos Santos, okay?
Yeah, Dos Santos.
Okay.
Simply
What's your reason?
because I'm hoping there's still part of the Dos Santos left
that
was
tearing,
that won the title, and
that was tearing through
yeah,
people.
tearing through. I don't think there's as much left, but at the same time, Reem off the juice. How good is he?
Well,
I don't know. It's.
Do you know what?
I know he's been off the juice. Well, supposedly been off the juice.
Now, yeah, I've went for Dos Santos as well, and the reason is I know he's had a lot of wars in the past couple of fights, and it's taken a hell of a toll. But he's switched his place to ATT full time.
Yeah, true.
And I'll tell you what, that will pay dividends for him. Absolutely see a different guy out there. I feel that you're going to see a better Dos Anjos than you've seen before. Mm-hmm. And I just feel that he's probably quicker with the boxing than over. I probably would say he's probably. Go on. I'm going to say the boxing's probably going to be quicker than Overeem's, even though Overeem's got an awesome kickboxing. I think Dos Santos could probably get this one. Yeah, I do. I really do. I don't know if it's more hope than anything, but I do. I think Dos Santos could. But the problem is, again, if he does, he's stuck in that position where he's
Again, yeah.
How do you sell it?
Kane.
How do you sell? If Kane would have win, how do you sell it? If Kane loses, you can do
Verdum
Santos. You can do that.
We actually saw him lose to Miocic, even though a few people didn't see it that way.
No. But listen, if Kane loses to Verdum again, which I think Verdum will win anyway, if he loses to Kane, if Verdum wins, you can do Santos against Verdum because Dos Santos finished Verdum and got him knocked out of the UFC. Because he's the one who dropped that uppercut on him.
And I think Verdum would love that fight.
He would, and you can sell it. That's a great sell.
Yeah.
Now, will it happen? Who knows? It's all literally the roll of the dice on if the fights come through. Main event time now, folks. We're going to go with Rafael Dos Anjos versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. I would ask Mike who he's gone for, but I know Mike's lips are wrapped around Donald's cock so hard.
I would have Cerrone's tattoo put on my back.
You would never get him detached from his penis. So
yeah, the only thing that could probably split me from Cerrone is if
nothing
a fight with Conor happens.
Nothing will happen
because
you'll still pick Conor because Cerrone.
No, I would just sit in the dark and cover my eyes.
No, you wouldn't.
Wait for the result.
Why have you got what? I would say why.
Cerrone.
I would say why, but you're always going to pick him.
Why? Because he's got a cowboy hat and he rides horses and does crazy things. I don't. It's more a case of want and dream and hope that he gets it. I got nothing against Dos Anjos. I don't know. Arrested cowboy.
Is that a good thing? That's the problem.
I don't know. That guy likes to do something crazy every week.
But it's not that. It's when you see him fight often, he seems to it keeps him sharper in a way. You think if he doesn't fight often,
fight ready all the time.
But
yeah.
I
don't know. It gives his body a chance to sort of rest up. When I say rest up, I don't mean don't do anything. I mean heal.
I changed my mind on who I thought was going to win from a comment from a journalist this week, because he said he saw Dos Anjos, and he said he doesn't look the same, as in he doesn't know if he's maybe slimmed down, but he reckons maybe because the testing might got stricter, so to speak. So
right, he's not looking as thick or anything. No?
So we don't. He says he doesn't think he looks the same as he usually does. Now, I was going to pick Dos Anjos before. I did speak to him about it privately offline, and he said that. So we had a little chat. I think I'm going to go with Cerrone on this because it does make a difference, that stuff. If he is or if he isn't.
Or even the psychological side.
I don't even want to say he is or isn't doing anything. All I want to say is that sways you, and that stuff can make a difference, and it's been noticeable with fighters who have come off testosterone or who've come off anything. It's noticeable in their performance. Yeah, so I went with
especially in the chin as well.
I went with Cerrone as well. So I think Cerrone will win that fight. I
hope so.
If it does, it would be great.
Do you know what? And I think that if Cerrone does win, it opens so many more chances for other fights down the line.
Round up, we're just going to talk about. We talked about some of the issues with Jeff. One thing I wanted to talk about was the passing of Yang Bing or Jian Bing on the 1FC card at the weekend. The 21-year-old weight cutting. It went clearly horribly wrong. He was unresponsive, and then it obviously went to hospital, and it didn't end too well. This really. It's just me and Jeff spoke about it, and we said, sadly, you need a tragedy for people to take action, and for people to take notice of it. Everyone talks about weight cutting, everyone needs to look after this, and then no one does anything because nothing happens.
Well, people just carry on doing things the same way because they're they feel they know better because they've done it a certain way before.
It's like people when cocaine. Oh, let's do cocaine, and then eventually people have to die for it to people say no, it's kind of thing. You know, you have to
it has
have
to be
the
high
tragedy.
profile. Like it has to be like a friend or something like that. You know,
and this was something I think that's really gone under the radar because of the monumental events at the UFC.
Yeah, how huge.
And do you know what? I think it's an absolute crying shame that it's went under the radar the way it has.
But what I say then is, well, with that in mind, then let's not it be over nothing. You know, let some good come from it. And with the year of the IV ban and the year of this tragedy, you know.
Well, there is things because they're having the weight cutting summit. They're having the weight. There's a summit going on in the US. Just went on literally a few hours back, and they are looking at introducing many new issues with addressing many issues. New weight, adding more weight classes. Only allowing fighters to add a certain percentage of their body weight back on after
which I think is key.
They talked about doing a weigh-in 72 hours before, not 24 hours, because 24 is
make sure they properly hydrate
the brain. And they've always said 24 is not enough anyway. And I knew this, but the thing is, like you said, the problem of the past was if I can get 3 days, I'll probably risk cutting more weight to put on a lot more weight.
I think the only way forward is yes, have more weight categories so that people can fight closer to their optimum weight, and secondly, for that amount of weight that you're able to put back on.
You see, the thing is,
the only thing is the promotions won't like that because you're going to have fighters that won't fight on the day of the fight.
You've got a lot of. The problem is you can't please everyone what you're trying to say. Secondly, it's a rabbit hole. You're never going to have the right answer.
No.
Like for example, the 72 hours thing. I like that only if there is the limitation on how much they can put back on. Because if you say, we're going to give you 72 hours for your body to fully heal, you
need a few rules to come in.
Yeah.
It's not one or two, it's 3 or 4 all working together. So it will be more weight classes, I believe. It will be more time to recover.
I think the 72
and
hours...
it will be, and you're already allowed to...
Well, if it's 10%, it works. I think because if you do the 72 hours, you've got 10%. People can take their time to get their body weight up, and also, do you know if they do go over the 10% in that time, they've got a little bit of time to get off.
Well, it's like we spoke about before, where he mentioned about
Louis.
He said what weight you best perform at in training.
Yeah,
he says that's what we want you fighting at. Now, if the weight you're cutting isn't within that bracket. You know, if that isn't within that 10% of, you know, then why are you cutting down that far?
Oh no, it's putting 10% back on.
No, that's what I mean.
It's not cutting 10% off.
I know what you mean. But what I mean is so if I best perform at 152 and 10% lower than that is, you know, I'm cutting below that. So I'm only able to put on 10% back on after. And I'm not getting to my 152... then I'm definitely in the wrong category. Do you know what I mean?
I'm looking forward to seeing how many promotions listen or how many promotions take action. I'm going to get more information on this. I'm actually probably going to get someone on who was either a part of this kind of legislation ideas that are put in place. I'm going to get someone to talk more about it, and also, you know, to enlighten the subject more, not just for yourselves but for us as well. We're going to go on now because we'll leave that there because there's a lot more to it than we're talking about. We're going to go on to the Charlie Lewis Parry, sorry. Charlie Lewis Parry was due to fight Brendan Vera for the heavyweight title at 1FC. He didn't. Man, it was
answers on a postcard.
It was a bit unfortunate. That's the word I want to use. That was a bit unfortunate the way the how do I say this? The shenanigans went down. No, that won't be a way to put it down. The events were unfolded. That's the way to put it. Okay, the events that unfolded. It got to a point where basically you're not going to see Charlie Lewis Parry fighting on 1FC ever again. Now,
One Championships, isn't it, or something?
Yeah, I call it 1FC.
It's got just sounds better.
Yeah. Now they brought in a gentleman called Paul Cheng. Now Charlie Lewis Parry, he believes, or he has elaborated, that the 1FC didn't want him on on to fight Brandon Vera because they want to protect Brandon Vera because they feel because he's one of their cherished kind of fighters. He also felt like they were disrespecting him, and he believes that they just told him not to come over, and he said this, and he has his arguments. Now, ONE FC have come back. Well, Rich Franklin came back and stated that no, we did ask for his medicals. He never sent them to us. Lewis Parry's argued about this, and we also brought in Paul Chain because of Matt Hume was worried that the fight wouldn't happen because they hadn't had the medicals a week before the fight, so he brought Paul in as a last-minute replacement, and eventually he actually ended up stepping in, and Brendan won the title within like 30 seconds, I think, or something like that, about 27 seconds.
It wasn't long.
Yeah, I think it was about 27. So, the thing is, not a great weekend for ONE FC. I think the ONE FC, I know it sounds terrible to say this, but the two tragedies, the tragedy that they had and this big, massive, let's say, tarnish is a good thing to happen at that weekend of the UFC. Because
it'll go, the rest of the world was watching.
All the attention went
towards the east.
Yeah, all the attention went away. So, I want to get Chai Lewis Parry on. I want to get him on. I want to talk to him, and I want to find out more.
Well, it'd be nice to ask him and get a straight answer.
Well, it's not that because you're never going to. I don't think we're going to get a straight answer from both parties.
Well, you need to get everyone into the room and sort of.
Yeah, probably not.
Say like people's faces, you know.
Yeah, I think I just would like to get. I'd like to ask more forward questions of him, and ask more hard-hitting questions of him. I wouldn't, and I will tell him that as well. I'll say, look, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I can't sit there.
Yeah, treat it like a courtroom. And
I can't sit there and be your best buddy on it. I'm going to have to sit there and I'm going to pose questions to him that might make him irate or infuriated. But do you know what? You need to ask him to get the answer.
But the thing is if he's in the right, then he won't mind answering.
No, exactly. So we're going to go away from ONE FC. We're going to World Series of Fighting now. And do you know what? They've done the right thing. They have parted ways with Ali Abdelaziz. Now, he was, like I posted on the Facebook page about the stories about Nevada Athletic State Commission finally looking into his association or his involvement within World Series of Fighting, because it states that you, basically they've got like a written ruling where you can't be a matchmaker and a fighter agent for the same promotion because of conflict of interest. Now, there was a lot of documentaries done by Bloody Elbow, documented information, by Bloody Elbow, stating that he is in fact, where he's quoted himself as being the matchmaker and the fighter agent for Dominance Alliance, which is the fighter agency. He also just spoke to Ariel Helwani as well about his partying with World Series Fighting, and in the interview itself, it was disgusting because he do you know what though? He will be a great politician.
Yeah,
because he can't answer anything. Way,
there wasn't a single yes or no. There was no straight answer.
No,
and there was an awful lot of talking. And I must admit, halfway through his answer, well, I don't even know if it was halfway through, because I don't even know if we got to the end of it. But you almost find yourself, what was the question?
Yeah.
You know, it
was
kind of like we get to.
And sometimes. It's frustrating because I'd love to interview a handful of his fighters, but the problem is I don't want to speak to him. But Frank Edgar, I love that Frank Edgar. But you know what? I ain't speaking to him because I can't do it. And now I know they'll all back him up and they'll all support him. All his guys will. But do you know what? There's a lot of writing on the wall. There's a lot of shit on the wall, and some of that's sticking. Yeah. And as much as they want to back him up, you can't hide what's going on.
Well, do you know what?
There's a guy.
Put it this way: if the guy can't give a straight answer, what's he hiding?
Yeah, there's a guy called Mike Russell who's doing an article on Ali about a lot of stuff going on, and it's coming out soon. I'm speaking to him about tagging me in so I can read it as well. Then I will put it out there to everyone else. Ali is already on Twitter having a go at him as well. And you know what? I can't wait for it to come out. Absolutely cannot wait. So I will post that. So we'll leave it there for now, because until that comes out, we'll get some more information. And you know what? I hate to sometimes bring up bad vibes or bad information, but you know what? Sometimes it has to be said, and this is certainly one of the things. But World Series of Fighting, this might do them good. getting him off the focus of the promotion, because then all the focus goes on him solely and not links in with the promotion.
You get to sort of
they can segregate themselves.
Take a fresh breath.
They can take themselves away. Last bit we're going to talk. Well, not last bit. Sorry, I'm rephrase that. One of the last things we're going to talk about is the free market that's coming on. Suddenly, fighters in the UFC, which is the Olympic of sporting events, you could say. If you're an athlete, you want to get a gold medal, you go to the UFC.
Yeah,
okay?
In the MMA world.
So we have a couple of guys. You got Aljamain Sterling, who has just fought his last fight. You had Benson Henderson, who fought his last fight. You had Dustin Poirier come up to his last fight when he fights Joe Duffy.
Folks, when we say last fight, we mean last fight of their contracts.
You have Alistair Overeem. You have Alistair Overeem as well, who's fighting Junior Santos in the UFC Orlando card. Now, so you got those guys, okay? So they're fighting right now. Listen, I love it.
Yes, I think it is fantastic news for any would-be fighter. And, you know, they're not saying they're going to leave the UFC. They're just saying, I just want to see my worth. And do you know what? This Reebok deal is kind of biting them on the arse, because what they're looking at is okay, so what's the deal I'm getting elsewhere? Now, it doesn't have to be Bellator. There's also promotions in the Far East.
There's several.
You know, so there's other promotions out there, shall we say, right, where you can bring your own sponsorship. Now, I don't care what the UFC will have you believe. The sponsorship deal is not fantastic at all. You know, there was mega bucks that could be had in sponsorships.
Yes, there is.
You know.
So, like you say, Josh Thompson went away to Bellator and he's making more money than he would have done in the UFC.
Yeah, he's living proof.
Yeah.
You know, the UFC was saying like, oh no, you know, well, okay, there's one high profile who, you know, he didn't go from losing the belt a couple of fights down the road to leaving. You know what I mean? So he's on, you know, more money. It'd be interesting to see what. I do believe Benson Henderson was offered one straight away, wasn't it? He was offered.
Yeah, it was a Korean one, Road FC. They offered him 200,000, but they haven't said the breakdown of it. But that's what.
No, but it just goes to show that the money is out there elsewhere. So yeah, I sort of sit and wait patiently to see what comes of this. I think it'll be a good thing. You know, do I think they'll leave the UFC? I don't necessarily think they'll leave the UFC, but I do think that fighter pay in the UFC will be increased. Now, they'll have you believe that they pay the most. They may pay the most, but what they do stop is your ability to earn outside of what they pay. Mm-hmm. So they'll say, oh yeah, but okay, so let's say you've got somebody... If you're on 7 fights and you go to the UFC, you'll pick up $10 normally... $10,000 with a possibility of a win bonus of $10,000. That's normally the basic level entry to the UFC.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, that pretty much is higher than you'll get anywhere else at that level. And probably a fair jump as well. Okay? So I give the UFC that. But if you've got good marketing behind you and you're 7 or 8 fights, you might already have, a good sponsorship behind you.
Yeah.
Or you've only got to get another 2 wins, and then in those next 2 wins, boom, your sponsorship comes. If you're in the UFC and you're on a 3-fight start, you have those 2 fights. Guess what? You're still on $10,000. $10,000, plus 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? You still can't add to your sponsorship.
Nope.
And it's
a dangerous thing. But do you know what? I love the fact that these guys who are doing it are not no ones.
No.
These guys who are pushing, they're like top 10 guys.
Yeah.
These guys are...
They're going to be the game changers.
They're guys that you'll notice when they go. You'll notice when they go. There'll be guys that you'll miss in the promotion, and they'll test it. Do you know what? I look forward to it. I'm quite excited about it. Now, we are going to touch on to the, let's say, the bigger news, which is Rizin have announced Fedor's opponent finally. Now, there was a handful of names getting spouted about. And it's been announced. And I won't lie.
Disappointment?
Yeah, it's probably the worst thing you could ever imagine.
Has he gone back to the Indian guy?
Yeah.
No way!
Jayed Deep Singh, who's 2-0, is fighting...
That's not 20-0, guys.
Who's fighting Fedor.
That's just 2 and there's a space between.
I think Rizin has had the potential and excitement, and everyone was looking forward to it. And now, all of a sudden, even Bob Sapp's on that card as well.
They dug him up?
Yeah.
They took some shovels, didn't it?
I tell you what, this is turned into an absolute freak show. Like,
do you know what they had? Like they've got good media attention behind them. They've definitely got money, being behind it. Backed behind it. And then they go and throw, was I excited to see Fedor come back? Yeah, a little bit. I'm also happy enough to see him stay in retirement. But I don't want to see him come back fighting a guy who, let's be honest, India, I'm sorry, guys, you're not really known for your MMA fighters. So especially a 2-0 guy fighting Fedor.
Fedor's 34-4. I know he's 39 years old or 40 years old, but there you go.
By the way, when we say he's 34-4... he's probably had 30 of those fights at top level.
Yeah.
Because this guy lived in Pride, lived in Strikeforce.
It's a shame. Do you know what? It's an absolute...
lived in affliction,
Look, it's a waste. Let's not waste our time talking about it. It's a stupid thing. It's stupid it's happening. I can't even talk about that, to be honest with you. I'm a bit just disgusted. It's
a bit sad, really.
We're going to go next week. It's our Christmas theme next week. I know it's Christmas anyway, but the next week is our Christmas theme, and we're gonna have just a. We're gonna have I'm gonna get us some good guests on. I don't know about Mike, but we're gonna get a collection of fun people to talk about 2015 in MMA, and just talking anyway about MMA and just having a bit of giggle, having shits and laughs. And we hope you all enjoyed this week. We certainly did. We had a great time. And we just want to get you, before you go, jump on your social networking sites and give these people a follow. We have
UFC Scotland.
We have on Facebook UFC Wreckage. Also, their website and Twitter is MMA Wreckage.
We also have MMA UK, and their Twitter handle is We Are MMA UK.
On Facebook, we have Fighting and MMA.
And on Facebook and Twitter, we have The Real MMA Talk.
And then last but not least, on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, they're funny. They talk about MMA. It's funny MMA. Jump on. They'll give you a giggle. And let's finish off with thank you very much, everyone. We will be back very soon, won't we, Mike?
Yep, definitely. Thank you very much and goodbye.